Chapter 251. Lin Tian was a little surprised. It was just a stone wall, but at this time, the stone lotuses on the stone wall actually moved in his field of vision. They swayed as if they were real lotuses, and there were even specks of brilliance. At this time, his sea of consciousness shook, and huge waves suddenly appeared. In an instant, Lin Tian was completely stunned. Ji saw that Lin Tianyi did not move and was slightly curious. However, in the next moment, Ji was slightly surprised because Lin Tian's glabella suddenly lit up. Moreover, there was an obviously powerful fluctuation of vital essence on his body. Ji did not know what was happening to Lin Tian at this moment, but she knew that this was a very important moment for Lin Tian. Immediately, she retreated a few feet away from Lin Tian and then cautiously scanned the surroundings to protect Lin Tian. Lin Tian stared ahead. The stone lotuses swayed and shone brightly. Gradually, his sea of consciousness shook even more violently. At this moment, the scene in his field of vision completely changed. Many real, white lotuses intertwined in the surroundings, swaying slightly under the sunlight and dancing quietly in the breeze. Lin Tian felt that at this moment, his soul was somewhat shaken. A solid sword essence. Lin Tian was shocked. At this time, he clearly felt an extremely majestic sword essence on the stone wall. It was so strong that it was somewhat frightening. Buzz! Suddenly, in his field of vision, the white lotuses swayed even more violently, and lotus petals flew up one by one. Lin Tian stared straight ahead. Then, with a clang, the lotus petals flew up and turned into rays of sword light. These sword lights circled in Lin Tian's field of vision, clanging like countless birds flapping their wings. In the next moment, Lin Tian was shocked again because these dense sword lights were all aimed at him, and all of them were shooting towards him. Lin Tian's heart skipped a beat. However, he instinctively stood where he was and stared at the boundless sword light that was rushing towards him. Within these sword lights, he could feel a sword aura that was extremely powerful and frightening. Whoosh! 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 The dense sword lights intertwined, and the lotus petals fluttered, rushing into his glabella. Lin Tian felt a slight pain in his glabella. In the next moment, his sea of consciousness was filled with sword lights, and these sword lights occupied his entire sea of consciousness in an instant. Then, not long after, these sword lights all moved and slashed towards his sea of consciousness one by one, as if they were going to shatter his sea of consciousness. Staring at this scene, Lin Tian was surprisingly calm and stared straight at the sword lights that were slashing down. It was even to the extent that he automatically withdrew a strand of his divine sense to move against the slashing force of these sword lights, and he started to deduce the formidable sword insight that resided within them. Clang! The dense sword lights continued to slash down, slashing his divine consciousness. Lin Tian was shocked. His sea of consciousness was indeed slashed, but there was no intense pain as expected. On the contrary, every time his sea of consciousness was slashed, he felt his divine consciousness become stronger. This feeling was similar to when he took the spirit forging pill. No, it was even more amazing than that time. Buzz! The sword lights were bright and clanging. Then, Lin Tian's entire sea of consciousness was in turmoil. Lin Tian watched all this. As the sword lights continued to fall, he found that his divine consciousness was becoming crystal clear, and his sea of consciousness was gradually expanding and becoming more vast. In just a few dozen breaths, Lin Tian found that his divine consciousness had more than doubled, and his cultivation had also climbed to the middle of the third sky of the sea of consciousness in an instant. At this time, the sword lights in his sea of consciousness were still slashing down. Sword! It's all swords! Lin Tian muttered to himself. His divine consciousness slashed down with the dense sword lights, and a strange and vague trajectory gradually appeared in his mind. As his divine consciousness continued to chase after the dense sword lights, this trajectory became clearer and clearer. Lin Tian felt that this trajectory seemed to be a powerful sword technique. Bow! Suddenly, a crisp sound was heard. Lin Tian had been looking at his sea of consciousness the entire time. Looking in the direction of the sound, he saw a white lotus flower growing out from a certain location within his sea of consciousness. Green leaves grew out from both sides of the lotus flower. This lotus was very small at first, but as the endless sword light slashed down, this white lotus gradually grew bigger. Bow, bow, bow. Soon, the same sound was heard. In just a moment, white lotuses appeared in Lin Tian's sea of consciousness, almost covering the entire sea of consciousness. At this time, the sword light that rushed into his glabella had completely cut into his sea of consciousness. Lin Tianji felt that his divine consciousness had become much stronger. The white lotuses took root in his sea of consciousness, causing his divine consciousness to become extremely calm and stable. Also, at this time, the sword essence that he was chasing with his divine consciousness became extremely clear, and the vague trajectory of the sword momentum became completely clear. White Lotus Sword Manual. Lin Tian's heart skipped a beat. At this moment, the complete White Lotus Sword Manual appeared in his sea of consciousness. Wang. As this sword momentum became clear, his entire body's essence, qi, and spirit soared, and the tyrannical waves of vital essence involuntarily surged. Beams of bright light rushed out and condensed into a huge white lotus above his head in an instant. At the same time, with him as the center, a radius of 30 feet was also filled with vital essence lotuses. This is not far away. Ji looked at this scene and was completely stunned. Almost at the same time, in the Valley of the Harp, a few of the giants were all shocked. In just a moment, 5 figures flashed over, each of them exuding an extremely powerful aura. 5 Zephyr powerhouses. The 6 giants of the Valley of the Harp. Except for the Supreme Elder, all 5 of them were here. Junior. Suyu's voice was cold as she slapped her palm over. Yu Wushuang's face darkened. She slashed out with her sword and forced Suyu to retreat more than 10 feet. If you dare to attack again, don't blame me for being merciless. Yu Wushuang's face was a little cold. Suyu was older than her and had competed with her for the position of Valley Master. They had always been at odds with each other. Usually, for the sake of the peaceful development of the Valley of the Harp, she did not lower herself to Suyu's level. But now, Suyu had repeatedly tried to kill Lin Tian, which made her feel a little cold. Suyu's face was gloomy as she said angrily, "This is the most important place in the Valley of the Harp. You actually allowed an outsider to enter here and spy on the secrets of the Valley of the Harp. Now, you're stopping me from suppressing him. Are you trying to bring disaster to the Valley of the Harp?" The other 3 elders who were standing in the sky frowned as they looked at Yu Wushuang. He's Li Chongfeng's disciple. He can go anywhere in the Valley of the Harp. Yu Wushuang said indifferently. Suyu's face suddenly turned green, and her eyes were burning with anger. In the sky, the other 3 elders were shocked. Valley Master, is this young man really Li Chongfeng's disciples? One of them asked. Yu Wushuang's expression was calm as she nodded. The frown on the 3 elders' faces disappeared. That person actually took in a disciple, and this is such a familiar scene. Staring at Lin Tian, whose eyes were still closed, the 3 elders' eyes were shining brightly. As expected of that man's disciple, he's really a monster. One of them sighed. They looked deeply at Lin Tianyi, then nodded to Yu Wushuang and left in the blink of an eye. Suyu's face was cold as she finally left with a flick of her sleeve. "Master," Ji Yu shouted. Yu Wushuang nodded and walked down from the sky to Ji Yu's side. Staring at Lin Tian in front of her, Yu Wushuang's eyes flashed with a faint light. She was surprised and helpless. Soon an hour passed. The aura on Lin Tian's body gradually subsided, and he finally opened his eyes. At this time, his sea of consciousness had expanded a lot, and his divine sense was crystal clear and much stronger. His cultivation had directly climbed to the peak of the 3rd layer of the sea of consciousness. As long as he cultivated a little, he could easily step into the 4th layer of the sea of consciousness. "You're awake," Yu Wushuang said. Lin Tian turned around and saw Yu Wushuang. He was stunned for a moment, then bowed. After a pause, he said, "That senior, I accidentally found the White Lotus Sword Manual." At this time, not only had his divine sense become much stronger, but he also had the complete White Lotus Sword Manual, the Valley of the Harp's secret technique. He naturally would not hide this from Yu Wushuang. After all, Yu Wushuang was the Valley of the Harp's Valley Master. Ah! Next to him, Ji was a little surprised. Lin Tian had comprehended the Valley of the Harp's strongest cultivation technique. Yu Wushuang, on the other hand, wasn't surprised. She merely nodded her head indifferently. Clearly, she already knew. Staring at Lin Tian, her expression became a little more serious. "You can cultivate on your own, but you must never spread it. Understand?" Lin Tian was stunned for a moment, then said solemnly, "Senior, don't worry. Lin Tian swears that if this gets out, I will be destroyed by the heavens." Lin Tian knew how important the White Lotus Sword Manual was to the Valley of the Harp. Once it got out, it would definitely be a huge blow to the Valley of the Harp. It could be said to be devastating. "I believe you." Yu Wushuang nodded. Ji was a little puzzled and asked, "Master, you seem to have known from the beginning that he had comprehended the White Lotus Sword Manual. In that case, the other elders should have known as well, but other than Elder Su, the other three did not make things difficult for Lin Tian. Could this be?" After a pause, Ji said, "Is it related to his master?" Lin Tianyi was stunned. The other elders also knew, but other than Su Yu, no one made things difficult for him. This was a little too strange. After all, he had comprehended the Valley of the Harp's secret technique. Senior this, Lin Tian could not help but look at Yu Wushuang. Yu Wushuang nodded. This stone wall was left behind by the ancestors of the Valley of the Harp. Back then, our Valley of the Harp could barely be called one of the 4 major sections. Our strength was very weak, because at that time, the White Lotus Sword Manual was not complete. There were many places missing, especially the 9th layer, which was the most severely missing. Until that year, Li Changfeng came to the Valley of the Harp as a guest. It was also here that at the age of 20, he comprehended the complete White Lotus Sword Manual from the stone wall and engraved it into a jade scroll and handed it to the master of the Valley of the Harp, who is now the highest elder. The complete White Lotus Sword Manual. It should not be difficult for you to imagine how important it was to the Valley of the Harp. At that time, the highest elder almost fainted from joy. It was also after that, with the complete White Lotus Sword Manual, the strength of the Valley of the Harp rapidly increased. From barely being called one of the 4 major sects, it is now no weaker than the 7 Mysteries Pavilion and the Burning Sun sect. Only the 100 Refinements Workshop can slightly suppress us. All of this is thanks to Li Changfeng. Hearing this, Lin Tian and Ji Yu were both greatly shocked. From the looks of it, this was indeed a great kindness. Yu Wushuang looked at Lin Tian. "So, as the disciple of an old drunkard, you can freely walk around the Valley of the Harp. Even if you want to learn the White Lotus Sword Manual, you could do so because your master knows the White Lotus Sword Manual. If you really want to learn it, your master can teach it to you, and our Valley of the Harp does not have the qualifications to stop you. Rather than that, our Valley of the Harp passing it down to you is the same. There is no substantial difference." Chapter 252. Reading on a mobile phone. Lin Tian and Ji Yu were both a little surprised when they heard Yu Wushuang's words. They never thought that an old drunkard would have done such a great favor for the Valley of the Harp back then. Booknet. Ji Yu snickered. "You got a great bargain." Lin Tian was speechless. Yu Wushuang looked at Lin Tian and sighed. "How should I put it? You two are indeed master and disciple. Your master comprehended the complete White Lotus Sword Manual here back then. I didn't expect that after so many years, you would come here and comprehend it as well." "That's true." Ji Yu smiled. Lin Tian was a little speechless and embarrassed. He looked at Ji Yu and suddenly felt a little puzzled. He asked Yu Wushuang, "Speaking of which, didn't you say that Ji Yu was very talented? Why didn't she feel anything when she looked at the stone wall?" "Because she has already cultivated the complete White Lotus Sword Manual. Naturally, she wouldn't feel anything from the stone wall," Yu Wushuang said. Lin Tianyi was stunned. He thought about it and found that it made sense. Yu Wushuang once again instructed Lin Tian not to spread the White Lotus Sword mantra. Then she said, "Let little Yu take you to other places. I have to go and discuss this matter with the Taishang elder. At this time tomorrow, come find me again." After saying that, Yu Wushuang left. Jiyu then took Lin Tian to other places in the Valley of the Harp. They only separated at night. Lin Tian went back to his room and closed his eyes. The White Lotus Sword Manual's cultivation methods and sword techniques reverberated in his mind over and over again. The airborne realm is really powerful, Lin Tian thought to himself. The White Lotus Sword Manual at the airborne realm was a combination of cultivation methods and martial arts. There was even the White Lotus Phantom movement technique, which was very extraordinary. Lin Tian scanned it from beginning to end. In the end, his gaze still locked onto the 9 sword moves of the 100 Refinements sword canon. He discovered that the 9 sword moves were all extremely exquisite, far stronger than the Azure Thundersword technique. Speaking of which, an old drunkard is pretty good. Back then, he actually helped the Valley of the Harp organize the complete White Lotus Sword Manual. I wonder if that old guy practiced this sword manual. Lin Tian muttered to himself. Come to think of it, it had been 2 months since he last saw an old drunkard, and he missed him. After a pause, Lin Tian shook his head and lay down to rest. The night passed quickly. The next morning, led by Lu Jie, several outer disciples of the Valley of the Harp sent them off. The disciples of the 7 Mysteries Pavilion and the Burning Sun sect left the Valley of the Harp one after another. The 7 Mysteries Pavilion did not care about Lin Tian. As for the Burning Sun sect, Ling Yi disliked Lin Tian even more. Naturally, he did not care about when Lin Tian would return to the Burning Sun sect. He directly took the rest of the people and left. On this day, Lin Tian walked in the Valley of the Harp. Of course, Jiyu accompanied him. When this scene fell into the eyes of Lu Jie and the others, many people came up to him and asked him all sorts of questions. Lin Tian also discovered that in the entire Valley of the Harp, only Shun Yin and Jiyu did not get along well. The other disciples of the Valley of the Harp liked Jiyu very much and got along very well. As such, he was able to set his mind at ease. Soon, the sky became a little dark. Lin Tian arrived outside Yu Wushuang's room. With a creak, the door opened by itself. Let's go. Yu Wushuang walked out. Thank you for your trouble, Senior. Lin Tian on Dao. Yu Wushuang waved her hand and told Jiyu a few things. Then, she took Lin Tian and left from the other side of the Valley of the Harp. About 3 days later, Yu Wushuang brought Lin Tian to the stone steps of the Burning Sun sect. Okay, I won't go up. After returning to the sect, you should seize the time to cultivate and step into the realm of flying. With your aptitude, I think it will take you at most 2 years. Yu Wushuang said. Lin Tian sincerely expressed his thanks again, and then walked up to the Burning Sun sect. Yu Wushuang stood in place until Lin Tian boarded the Burning Sun sect, and then left. At this time, a purple-robed old man walked out from behind an old tree. I didn't think that Yu Wushuang would actually send that bastard all the way back to the Burning Sun sect. This old man was an elder of the 100 Refinements workshop. After learning that Lin Tian went to the Valley of the Harp, he waited on the road from the Valley of the Harp to the Burning Sun sect. But he didn't expect that the master of the Valley of the Harp, Yu Wushuang, would actually personally escort Lin Tian back to the Burning Sun sect. It seems that I can only force the Burning Sun sect to hand him over. With a low voice, the old man quietly left. After walking up the Burning Sun sect, Lin Tian went to the duty hall because he needed to register his return. You're willing to come back? Puin smiled. Lin Tian was a little puzzled. What do you mean? Isn't the Valley of the Harp full of beautiful female disciples? I thought you were staying in the land of warmth. Puin teased. Lin Tian, okay, I'm too lazy to ask why you came back later than the others. Ling Yi, that brat, fiercely complained about you. Puin smiled. On the way back, you didn't stop arguing with him, right? Who cares about him? Lin Tian on Dao. Puin waved his hand. Okay, go to your own thing. Lin Tian nodded, and then left the duty hall, walking out of his residence. Along the way, many disciples saw Lin Tian with a respectful expression. Many outer disciples even took the initiative to greet him. In this regard, Lin Tian didn't think too highly of himself. As long as someone came to greet him, he would politely respond with a smile. As he walked, Lin Tian saw an eyesore. The Burning Sun sect's deacon, Zhuoshang. You can actually come back alive. Your luck is really good, Zhuoshang said coldly. Even if your whole family is dead, I will still live well. Lin Tian on Dao. After saying that, he didn't look at Zhuoshang anymore and walked away. Staring at Lin Tian's back, Zhuoshang's face was ashen, and his eyes were cold. Little bastard, you won't live for long. The 100 refinements square won't let you go. Just wait for your death. With a low voice, Zhuoshang walked in the opposite direction. When Lin Tian returned to his residence, the sky had already darkened. Lin Tian didn't rest. Instead, he closed his eyes and began to cultivate the 4 extreme meridians. In the Valley of the Harp, he had comprehended the complete White Lotus Sword Manual. His knowledge had undergone a baptism, and his cultivation had reached the peak of the 3rd heavenly layer. Now, after returning to the sect, he began to cultivate immediately, preparing to rush to the 4th heavenly layer in one fell swoop. Buzz! Faint silver light lingered and intertwined around his body. At this time, he didn't use the spirit refining rune. Instead, he only unfolded 3 spirit gathering runes, drawing in the rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the power of stars. Then, he seriously immersed himself in the cultivation of his knowledge sea. At this time, his knowledge sea was filled with white lotuses. As he began to cultivate his knowledge sea, these white lotuses swayed slightly. Lin Tian calmed his mind and focused. Between his eyebrows, light flashed little by little. The consciousness in his knowledge sea trembled slightly with the swaying of the white lotuses. At this moment, his knowledge sea wasn't as turbulent as it was when he took the spirit-forging pill. Instead, there were only wisps of ripples spreading out, and with each ripple, his spiritual energy grew stronger. Strange, these white lotuses don't disappear? Lin Tian frowned. When he was comprehending the White Lotus Sword mantra in the Zither Serene Valley, white lotuses had appeared in his sea of consciousness. He originally thought that it was just a strange phenomenon that occurred when he was comprehending the White Lotus Sword mantra, and that it would soon disappear. Unexpectedly, after so long, these white lotuses were still in his sea of consciousness and showed no signs of disappearing. Lin Tian pondered for a moment, but in the end, he still couldn't figure it out. Forget it. Next time I see an old drunkard, I'll ask that old guy. He muttered to himself. After taking a deep breath, Lin Tian continued to cultivate. In the darkness, a faint silver brilliance intertwined around his body. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged, and the power of stars fell with it, surrounding his entire body. In this way, his cultivation of divine sense became much smoother than that of ordinary people. About 6 hours later, a majestic force burst out from his body. At that moment, Lin Tian only felt his senses become slightly stronger. He looked into a sea of consciousness and discovered that it had expanded a little. The white lotuses in his sea of consciousness had become even more lustrous, and there was a faint glow circulating around them. Even his sea of consciousness was covered in a layer of white light, making it seem very hazy. 4th layer of knowledge sea. Lin Tian muttered to himself. In his eyes, 2 rays of light flashed. After reaching the 4th layer of knowledge sea, his knowledge sea became stronger, and his spiritual sense became more sensitive. At the same time, the true essence in his body naturally became more vigorous. Lin Tian clenched his fists, only to feel that his battle strength had increased several times in an instant. "Who?" Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Lin Tian calmed his heart and closed his eyes again. He took out a dozen essence-fortifying pills from the stone ring, swallowed them, and once again operated the 4 extreme scripture. Essence-fortifying pills were very useful for sorting out true essence. Lin Tian relied on essence-fortifying pills to sort out his true essence and stabilize his current realm. In the blink of an eye, the night passed. The next day, Lin Tian got up early to wash up, face the morning sun, and then went to the celestial river tower. With his true essence sorted out and his realm consolidated, he wanted to rely on the power of the celestial river tower to stabilize his knowledge sea. Entering the celestial river tower, Lin Tian spread out his knowledge sea and directly broke through the first layer of the celestial river tower to reach the second layer. Then, he spread out his knowledge sea and broke through the second and third layers of the celestial river tower to reach the fourth layer. As soon as he entered the fourth layer, Lin Tian shook violently, as if a big stone had hit his head. Looking up, Yang Kai saw a magnificent starry river above the fourth floor of the celestial river pagoda. The starry river was so dense that it was frightening. Mysterious arc-shaped waves were constantly pressing down on him like sharp blades, giving off an astonishing pressure. The pressure in the fourth layer of the celestial river tower is much stronger than the third layer, Lin Tian thought to himself. Without thinking much, Lin Tian quickly sat down cross-legged and released his knowledge sea to resist the invisible impact falling from the celestial river tower. As his knowledge sea shook, his knowledge sea also released his knowledge sea and pressed forward. Cultivating one's knowledge sea in the celestial river tower was to use one's knowledge sea to resist the impact falling from the celestial river tower, and then split it apart to hone one's knowledge sea. Lin Tian released his knowledge sea to resist the impact falling from the fourth layer of the celestial river tower, but he only felt that it took a lot of effort. Buzz! Chapter 253. Reading on a mobile phone, Lin Tian was shocked. The force of impact from the river of stars was invisible, and he could only see the waves by relying on his divine sense. Moreover, he could only rely on his divine sense to push the waves towards the river of stars, but he couldn't destroy them. But now, the lotus petals that floated out from his sea of knowledge didn't just push them away, they even directly shattered some of them. This kind of impact can be said to be similar to the existence of divine sense. These lotus petals can actually cut divine sense? Lin Tian was shocked. Intersection. Until now, he had never heard of a method that could cut divine sense, at least not under the celestial reaching realm. Staring at the star river above, Lin Tian was a little scared. Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes and took the initiative to communicate with the white lotuses in his sea of consciousness. Suddenly, the white lotuses swayed and broke. Lotus petals floated out of them and cut toward the star river under his mind. Chi! 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 The lotus petals floated out and cut the invisible impact falling from the star river, cutting a gap in it. Lin Tian was moved. He took out the lotus petals again and kept cutting them forward. Sizzling sounds continued to ring out as the formless impact from the river of stars was continuously shattered. However, gradually, the impact from the river of stars became much stronger. It was difficult for the lotus petals to shatter, and they were unable to advance any further. These lotus petals can cut the impact falling from the star river, but it still depends on my own cultivation, Lin Tian thought to himself. After a pause, Lin Tian took a deep breath, stood up, and left the star river pagoda with his divine sense. At this moment, he was eager to try what kind of power the white lotuses in his sea of consciousness had and whether they could be used in a battle. Walking out of the star river pagoda, he didn't hesitate and soon came to the demon's sealing gorge. Roar! Whoa! Thousands of feet deep in the demon's sealing gorge, the roars of demonic beasts kept coming out, and the air was filled with a strong demonic aura. Lin Tian looked around and soon found a 7th-level demonic beast, the iron-scaled lion. The iron-scaled lion was at least 6 meters tall and was easily angered. In front of a human, it was simply a colossus, extremely frightening. When Lin Tian saw the iron-scaled lion, he did not hesitate. He stepped in front of it and raised his hand to punch it. The iron-scaled lion was enraged by the pain. It swiped its claw at Lin Tian. Lin Tian retreated, using the yin and yang liang to dodge. At the same time, light flickered between his eyebrows, and several lotus petals swept out. The lotus petals seemed to be as light as a feather, but in the blink of an eye, it pierced into the head of the iron-scaled lion. Roar! Suddenly, the iron-scale lion let out a miserable howl and fell to the ground with a thump, its body twitching uncontrollably. It can be used in battle. Lin Tianwei was delighted. However, Lin Tian was a little surprised because the iron-scale lion's cries were really miserable. Looking at it up close, the iron-scale lion's eyes were bloodshot, and saliva was dripping from the corner of its mouth, as if it was having epilepsy. This, Lin Tian's heart shook. Were those few lotus petals' offensive power so strong? In any case, this iron-scaled lion was a powerful, demonic beast comparable to a spiritual sea cultivator. Lin Tian stood guard not far from the iron-scaled lion, observing its reaction. He heard the iron-scaled lion's cries getting weaker and weaker. After a few minutes, it finally got better and struggled to stand up from the ground. At this time, when it looked at Lin Tian again, the iron-scaled lion's eyes were no longer angry. Instead, they were filled with fear. It turned around and fled. Lin Tian was stunned. The iron-scaled lion, known for its belligerence, actually fled after being hit. Shaking his head, Lin Tian continued to walk deeper into the demon-sealing gorge. Not long after, he encountered a flaming eagle. It was an 8th-level demonic beast, comparable to a human cultivator at the 4th level of the spiritual sea. He took a step forward, clenched his fist, and swung it. The flaming eagle was furious. A human dared to attack it like this. It opened its mouth, and a shocking flame was spat out. The flame's temperature was frighteningly high. In an instant, it ignited a nearby patch of old wood, burning it rapidly. Lin Tian frowned. His spiritual sea shook, and lotus petals once again floated out, slashing toward the flaming eagle like swords. The flaming eagle opened its mouth and spat out another stream of flame. The flame instantly engulfed the lotus petals, causing Lin Tian to frown. However, in the next moment, his expression changed again. The lotus petals he sent out were not affected by the flame at all. Their speed did not change, as if they had not encountered anything. They passed through the raging flames directly and slashed into the flaming eagle's head. Just like the iron-scaled lion, the flaming eagle let out a miserable cry and fell to the ground with a bang. Lin Tian looked over, only to see that just like the iron-scaled lion, the flaming eagle's entire body was twitching, saliva dripping from its mouth, and its eyes were bloodshot. At the same time, there was another similarity between them, and that was that there was not a single wound on their bodies. This caused Lin Tian's eyes to flicker as a bright light swiftly flashed across them. Could it be that this white lotus directly attacked their brain nerves? Lin Tian's expression changed. Every living thing had a brain nerve, and all the reactions of all living things were basically related to the brain nerve. Therefore, the importance of the brain nerve was self-evident. It was the same as the heart. When the brain nerve was attacked, the pain was unimaginable. Once the brain nerve was damaged, the living thing would die, without a doubt. For cultivators above the spiritual sea realm, the brain nerve was born in the spiritual sea and integrated with it. At this time, the spiritual sea became the most important part of the human body. Lin Tian imagined what had happened in the Xinghe Pagoda. The white lotus could cut through the invisible force falling from the Xinghe Pagoda. By inference, it could also attack the spiritual sea. This, Lin Tian could not help but widen his eyes. It seemed that the white lotus in his spiritual sea was terrifying. After a pause, Lin Tian suddenly remembered that the white lotus he had summoned just now seemed to be completely unaffected by the flaming eagle's flames. It was not hindered in any way. This made him think of a possibility. Could these white lotus petals be the same as the invisible force in the Xinghe Pagoda? Ordinary forces can't stop them? Thinking of this, Lin Tian summoned the white lotus petals and slashed them in all directions. When the white lotus petals encountered tangible trees or stones, they were not hindered and directly passed through them. The trees and stones were not damaged in the slightest, as if the lotus petals were illusory. After quietly pondering for a moment, Lin Tian controlled the white lotus petals to attack him. While he took out the heart spirit sword and slashed out bolts of lightning sword light, to block Lin Tian's attack. Soon after, he discovered that this method was completely useless. In the end, he tried to summon his spiritual sea. Only then was he barely able to stop the oncoming lotus petals. Sure enough, only the spiritual sea can stop this white lotus. Lin Tian muttered to himself. After scanning the demon-sealing gorge, Lin Tian walked to other places to find more demonic beasts to fight. Among them, he had experimented with Class 1 demonic beasts to Class 8 demonic beasts. The result was that all demonic beasts below Class 7 died tragically after being attacked by his White Lotus. Although Class 7 demonic beasts and Class 8 demonic beasts could resist, they could not withstand too many attacks. He fought with a powerful peak Class 7 demonic beast, a rainbow armored leopard. After using the same attack 4 times in a row, the rainbow armored leopard died. So powerful, Lin Tian was pleasantly surprised. He never imagined that the White Lotus in his spiritual sea would give him such a pleasant surprise. Taking a deep breath, Lin Tian stared into the distance and stepped out again to find more powerful demonic beasts to practice his White Lotus attack. Meanwhile, in another place, the 100 Refinements Workshop. Because the 100 Refinements Workshop controlled the 100 Refinements secret technique, it was recognized as the strongest among the 4 major sects. There were many geniuses in the sect. On this day, 2 guests came to the 100 Refinements Workshop. The 7 Mysteries Pavilion, Yi Jingshang. The Valley of the Harp, Su Yu. Is there something you need? The owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop welcomed them with a faint smile in a secluded pavilion. Yi Jingshang narrowed his eyes and said, "Not long ago, my disciple went to the Valley of the Harp and discovered that a little bastard of the Burning Sun sect actually controlled your sect's 100 Refinements secret technique. I wonder if Owner Ge knows about this." The owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop was called Ge Fengming. His eyes narrowed when he heard Yi Jingshang's words. "Elder Su, could it be that you've come for this as well?" The owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop looked at Su Yu. Su Yu nodded. "Of course." Su Yu paused for a moment before a dim light flashed in her eyes. She said, "May I know what Owner Ge thinks about this matter? This old lady feels that this bastard has secretly learned your sect's secret technique and should be killed." A bright light flashed in the eyes of the owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop. Soon after, he smiled. "To be honest, my 100 Refinements Workshop is already aware of this matter. I heard that when that bastard went to the Valley of the Harp to pay a visit, we secretly sent people to capture him. Unfortunately, when that bastard returned to the Burning Sun sect, the owner of the Valley of the Harp personally escorted him. Although the people sent by my 100 Refinements Workshop were not weaker than the owner of the Valley of the Harp, we did not take action in order to maintain harmony with the Valley of the Harp." Su Yu's expression turned cold. "That bitch Yu Wushuang actually personally escorted that bastard." Su Yu clenched her teeth. Yi Jingshang's eyes flickered before he said, "In that case, what does Owner Ge plan to do next?" Hearing this, Su Yu also looked at the owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop. Lin Tian had once killed Jiang Runwen in front of Yi Jingshang. This caused Yi Jingshang to lose a lot of face. This time, his direct disciple, Di Wenhong, had also been seriously injured by Lin Tian. Yi Jingshang naturally wanted to kill Lin Tian. As for Su Yu, she was in the same situation as Yi Jingshang. Her reputation had been damaged several times because of Lin Tian. She also wanted to get rid of Lin Tian. The owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop said, "The 100 Refinements secret technique is extremely important to my 100 Refinements Workshop. No matter what, my 100 Refinements Workshop must retrieve it. In a few days, us old fellows will personally visit the Burning Sun sect and ask for it." As he spoke, the owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop looked at Yi Jingshang and Su Yu. "The two of you have come at the right time. May I know if the two of you can help? My 100 Refinements Workshop will give you sufficient benefits." Yi Jingshang and Su Yu looked at each other and frowned. "I'm afraid the Burning Sun sect will not give it to us." Su Yu shook her head. The owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop said, "If they don't give it to us, we'll snatch it by force. The secret technique of my 100 Refinements Workshop must not fall into the hands of others." "Snatch it by force?" Yi Jingshang said, "I'm afraid that's not very likely." The Burning Sun sect also has an extremely powerful mountain defense array. Once it's activated, entering it rashly will only lead to disaster. Suyu nodded as well. Don't worry. There are also people in the Burning Sun sect who wish for that evil creature to be killed. They will help us. The owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop said. Yijingshang and Suyu were moved. Are you serious? Of course. The owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop said. Yijingshang and Suyu looked at each other and nodded at the same time. All right, I'll follow you to the Burning Sun sect. Yijingshang said. Suyu nodded as a cold light flickered in her eyes. The owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop laughed. Thank you, elders. After this matter is completed, the 100 Refinements Workshop will definitely give you sufficient benefits. Burning Sun Sect, Demon Sealing Gorge. Lin Tian constantly searched for powerful demon beasts to battle. His control of the White Lotus and his knowledge sea was becoming more and more skillful. Soon, 4 hours passed. All right, Lin Tian secretly said as he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He operated the 4 extreme scripture and recovered his true essence on the spot. Then, he returned to the Burning Sun sect. Chapter 254. Reading on a mobile phone staring at the green-robed old man, Lin Tianwei frowned slightly. This person should be Ling Ye's master, Elder 2 of the sect. After a pause, Lin Tian didn't stop and continued towards the Burning Sun sect. Stop! A cold shout rang out. Ling Yi obviously noticed Lin Tian and blocked in front of Lin Tian. Not far away, the green-robed old man glanced over and didn't react. Get out of the way, Lin Tian said coldly. Ling Yi snorted and didn't talk nonsense. He directly punched at Lin Tian. A few days ago, Lin Tian embarrassed him several times. After returning from the Valley of the Harp, he asked his master to help him cultivate. That was why he appeared in the Demon Sealing Gorge. After a few days of harsh cultivation, his strength had increased a lot. Coincidentally, he met Lin Tian at this time. His eyes immediately turned cold. How could he be willing to let Lin Tian leave? He wanted to teach Lin Tian a lesson. Lin Tian's face turned cold. He slapped forward. This slap was not light. It shook the air and made a buzzing sound. Ling Ye's face changed. Lin Tian had also become stronger. He was much stronger than when he was in the Valley of the Harp. This made his face turn gloomy. How could he know that Lin Tian had now stepped into the 4th layer of the Sea of Consciousness? Compared to when he was in the 3rd layer of the Sea of Consciousness, it was normal for his combat strength to become stronger. Bang! Ling Ye's punch was even more ruthless. His fist carried a thick true essence. The fist and palm collided, making a muffled sound like a drum. Lin Tian narrowed his eyes. He had fought with Ling Yi several times. At this time, he also found that Ling Yi was much stronger. At least his physical strength had a very obvious improvement compared to before. He tilted his head and looked at the green-robed old man not far away. He immediately understood that this flying expert must have undergone extraordinary training for Ling Yi. Clang! The sound of the saber rang out, and a scorching airflow was generated. Ling Yi swung his treasured saber. A cold light flashed, and an old tree in the distance was split into 2. Lin Tian's eyes narrowed. With a wave of his right hand, the inner spirit sword appeared and slashed down diagonally. Now, after stepping into the 4th layer of the Sea of Consciousness, his battle prowess was much stronger than when he was in the 3rd layer of the Sea of Consciousness. After using the Azure Thunder Sword technique, the entire space was filled with the sound of swords. Ling Ye's expression was very cold. He was very unhappy with the fact that Lin Tian had become stronger. Falling moon! Ling Yi suddenly shouted. In an instant, Lin Tian felt a chill run down his spine. He saw densely packed energy sabers appearing like falling moons. With a clang, Lin Tian slashed out with his flaming thunder sword. Boom! The collision of the 2 powerful forces caused a hurricane to erupt. Pochin! Ling Yi shouted again. This slash was even more powerful than the falling moon, and it carried with it an extremely threatening stream of flames. Lin Tian clearly felt the pressure. He could tell that Ling Yi was using an airborne realm martial arts technique. He glanced behind him. The old man in the green robe stood still and could not see what was in front of him. So his glabella gradually lit up. "I haven't tested this move on a cultivator yet. Now is the time," he said coldly. In an instant, a lotus petal floated out from his glabella and slashed towards Ling Yi like a blade. "Child's play." Ling Yi raised his hand and slashed down. However, the lotus petal went through the long blade and directly into his head. Ling Yi was shocked and immediately screamed. With a bang, he was sent flying. Lying on the ground, Ling Yi's body twitched. His eyes were bloodshot. He tore his hair like a madman. Not far away, the old man in the green robe stared at Ling Yi lying on the ground and frowned slightly. He did not see Lin Tian's attack just now. At this moment, he did not notice any wounds on Ling Yi's body. However, Ling Yi was lying on the ground and howling in pain. It looked like he had suffered an unimaginable injury. Lin Tian stared at Ling Yi, and a faint light flashed in his eyes. As expected, you can directly attack the sea of consciousness. After a dozen breaths, Ling Yi felt a little better and struggled to stand up. What did you do?" Ling Yi roared angrily. Lin Tian glanced at Ling Yi coldly and then walked towards the burning sunset. Ling Yi stared at Lin Tian's back. Anger surged in his eyes. He wanted to chase after him, but he only felt a sharp pain in his head. This sharp pain made his whole body feel a little numb. Even his vision was affected. He forced himself to endure it. Lin Tian jumped onto an old tree and jumped again, appearing dozens of feet away. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. The old man in the green robe stood in front of him. Lin Tian's footsteps paused. His face suddenly darkened. "Elder Two, what is the meaning of this?" The old man in the green robe did not say anything. He stared at Lin Tian for a moment and then directly slammed his palm towards him. Lin Tian's expression changed. He suddenly felt a strong pressure. "Damn it!" Lin Tian cursed in his heart. He held up the Thunderfire sword, and a majestic sword intent crazily surged out. The old man in the green robe narrowed his eyes. He still calmly slammed his palm forward, instantly shattering everything. Seeing this, Ling Yi was pleasantly surprised. He clenched his fists tightly. Facing the old man in the green robe, Lin Tian did not have the calmness he had when facing Ling Yi. He pushed the Thunderfire sword to the extreme and madly slashed at the old man in the green robe to resist the old man's seemingly ordinary but incomparably overbearing palm power. He thought that the old man in the green robe might attack him, but when it really came to this, he was still very angry. Clang! Following his anger, the Thunderfire sword became even more terrifying. Streaks of sword intent rushed towards the old man in the green robe. The old man in the green robe was moved. A strange light flashed in his eyes. He still slammed his right palm down. With a whoosh, the Thunderfire sword that Lin Tianyi slashed out was instantly shattered. "Master, suppress him." Ling Yi laughed. The old man in the green robe glanced at Ling Yi. Then his gaze fell on Lin Tian again. He slowly slammed his palm forward. What seemed to be a light palm suddenly produced a sky full of palm shadows. Lin Tian gripped the heart-soul sword tightly. His eyes became even colder. Clang! The clanging of the sword continued. He directly used his strongest move, the Thunderfire sword, to slash apart the palm shadows. At the same time, his glabella lit up again. He was ready to use the White Lotus attack. At the moment, he could only rely on this move to take a gamble. He hoped that the White Lotus attack could create an opening for him, giving him a chance to escape. After all, he was facing a mighty one in the Zephyr Plane. There was no way he could fight back. His only option was to escape. At this moment, the old man in the green robe laughed. "You're able to remain calm in the face of a mighty one in the Zephyr Plane. You're not bad, kid. You're just like your master back then. You have the same monstrous talent and the same amazing talent." With a somewhat heroic laugh, the majestic aura on the old man in the green robe disappeared without a trace. Lin Tianwei was stunned and immediately frowned. In the distance, Ling Ye's expression also changed. The old man in the green robe looked at Lin Tian and said, "Don't think too much. I'm just testing your strength." "Testing my strength?" Lin Tianyi paused. You thought I was going to help my disciple suppress you?" The old man in the green robe snorted and said, "I, Tuamo, am not that shameless. If you weren't Li Chongfeng's disciple, I wouldn't even bother with you. It's just that I haven't seen Li Chongfeng for many years. When I see his disciple, I can't help but miss you." The old man in the green robe was named Tuamo. He was one of the 4 great elders of the Burning Sun sect. He was already 200 years old, and his cultivation was at the 3rd tier of the Zephyr Plane. He was very powerful. Lin Tian was speechless. Next to him, Ling Ye's expression changed. He stared at Lin Tian with some horror. "You're Li Chongfeng's disciple?" Looking at Lin Tian again, Ling Ye's expression became very ugly. In the history of the Burning Sun sect, the most famous name was undoubtedly Li Chongfeng. This name even overshadowed the founder of the Burning Sun sect. Lin Tian glanced at Ling Yi and was too lazy to pay attention to him. "What's wrong, kid? Are you unhappy with my disciple?" Tuamo said. Lin Tian opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. As if he knew what Lin Tian was thinking, Tuamo said, "I know that Ling Yi is a bit overbearing in the sect, but it doesn't mean anything. His overbearingness may make many people feel oppressed, but it also makes many disciples work hard to become stronger. Because when he bullies others, others want to bully them back. Isn't this a good thing?" Speaking of this, Tuamo laughed loudly. This is also a kind of motivation for others to work hard to cultivate. Lin Tian was speechless. He only felt that this old man was a bit silly. However, he had to admit that this old man's words did make sense. When people were bullied by others, they would become angry and want to bully them back. If they had such thoughts, they would naturally work hard to cultivate and become stronger. Only then would they have a chance to take revenge. "All right, your master. How is he now?" Tuamo asked. "He drinks every day." Lin Tian Ondao. "Is that so? That kid still can't forget what happened back then. Since he left that year, 100 years have passed. In 100 years, he hasn't come back even once. Even if he took in a disciple, he only sent a letter back to the sect." Tuamo sighed. He is probably afraid to see the Grand Elder. Lin Tian had already heard about an old drunkard's past from the Grand Elder. Thinking about it, he also felt a little sad. However, Master's cultivation hasn't fallen behind. This is the only thing worth rejoicing about, he said. A bright light flashed in Tuamo's eyes. He smiled and said, "I really hope to see that kid again." On the side, Ling Yi looked at Tuamo and Lin Tian chatting together, and his face became more and more ugly. In the blink of an eye, Lin Tian and Tuamo had chatted for an hour. After an hour, he bid farewell to Tuamo and continued to head towards the Burning Sun sect. Looking at Lin Tian's back, Tuamo smiled. "Disciple Ling Yi, your current cultivation is stronger than his, but your combat strength is weaker than his. You must work harder to cultivate. You must work extremely hard." Tu Bei smiled. When Lin Tian returned to the residence of the Burning Sun sect, the sky had already darkened. Vaguely, a few stars could be seen in the sky. Because he had constantly consumed his divine sense to experiment with the power of the White Lotus in the Demon Sealing Gorge, his essence, chi, and spirit were seriously exhausted. So at this time, he did not cultivate as usual, but lay down to rest. Soon, the darkness dissipated and the sky gradually brightened. When the morning sun fell, Lin Tian woke up and went directly to the Star River Tower to cultivate and hone his divine sense. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. On this day, Lin Tian walked out of the Star River Tower. After resting for an hour, he was ready to go to the Demon Sealing Gorge to cultivate the White Lotus Sword technique. Because, relatively speaking, the Azure Thunder Sword technique was a bit weak. Despite the addition of the flame power, it was not too strong. Now he needed to master a set of flying greatsword techniques for daily combat. As for the weapon control technique, he wanted to use it as a trump card. Following a path, Lin Tian went straight to the Demon Sealing Gorge. Chapter 255. Reading on a mobile phone, several powerful figures arrived above the burning sun sect in an instant. Lin Tianyi saw two of them, Yijing Shang of the Seven Mysteries Pavilion and Su Yu of the Valley of the Harp. Looking at the other four people beside them, Lin Tianyi's heart sank. The four of them all exuded an aura similar to Bai Yunfei's. Clearly, they practiced the same technique, which caused Lin Tianyi's heart to sink. Please search product #bookYinNet to see the most complete novel. They're from the 100 Refinements Workshop, he muttered to himself. The Zephyr Realm experts of the 100 Refinements Workshop had come to the Burning Sun sect. He vaguely guessed what was going on and immediately felt an ominous feeling. At this time, the other disciples of the Burning Sun sect naturally saw this scene and were all surprised. 6 Zephyr Realm experts. Isn't that Elder Su Yu of the Valley of the Harp? There's also Elder Yijing Shang of the Seven Mysteries Pavilion. The other 4, there's the owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop. What was going on? Everyone was shocked. What's the meaning of this? 5 figures walked out from the back mountain of the Burning Sun sect. The one in the lead was the master of the Burning Sun sect. Behind the master of the Burning Sun sect were 4 old men named Luo Yu, Tu Ming, Yang Xiu, and Zhao Hua. They were the 4 elders of the Burning Sun sect. Staring at the 6 figures in front of them, the faces of the leaders of the Burning Sun sect were somewhat cold. Intruding into the Burning Sun sect like this could be said to be looking down on the Burning Sun sect. Headmaster Li, please don't take offense. Of the 6 figures, the master of the 100 Refinements Workshop stood out and got straight to the point. Not long ago, I heard that a disciple of your sect killed the grandson of Elder Mu Hong of the 100 Refinements Workshop. Afterwards, Elder Mu Hong's disciple, Bai Yunfei, came to the Burning Sun sect to seek justice. It was also at that time that Bai Yunfei discovered another matter. Your disciple had secretly learned the 100 Refinements secret technique of the 100 Refinements Workshop. I believe that Headmaster Li should know what this means, right? I have come this time because I hope that Sect Master Li will hand that disciple over to my 100 Refinements Workshop. In the distance, when Lin Tian heard these words, his face immediately turned cold. As expected, they were coming for him. Yu Wushuang said that the 100 Refinements Square wouldn't let him go easily, but he didn't expect that the other party would directly kill their way into the Burning Sun sect. This, Master Balian, the elders of this sect have come to ask for him personally. There is also an elder from the 7 Profound Pavilion and an elder from the Valley of the Harp. Are they supporting the 100 Refinements Workshop? Many disciples of the Burning Sun sect were moved. Sect Master Ge, when did your 100 Refinements Workshop's strongest secret technique become so easy to steal? A Sea of Consciousness cultivator can steal the 100 Refinements secret technique from your 100 Refinements Workshop. Your 100 Refinements Workshop doesn't seem to be that weak, right? The Burning Sun sect master's face darkened. No one in my Burning Sun sect has cultivated the 100 Refinements secret technique. You may all return. The 100 Refinements Workshop master narrowed his eyes. Although the 100 Refinements Workshop is heavily guarded, it is difficult to guard against a villain. Sect Master Li, this matter concerns the strongest secret technique of a large sect. Please don't be too protective of your disciple. This isn't a good thing. Yijing Shang opened his mouth. Not long ago, this Yi's disciple returned from the Valley of the Harp and explained the strange matter he discovered in the Valley of the Harp. There is someone in the Burning Sun sect who knows the 100 Refinements secret technique. This old woman saw this matter with her own eyes. That evil creature controlled 15 treasures at the same time and injured this old woman's disciple. It is indeed the 100 Refinements secret technique of the 100 Refinements Workshop. Su Yu coldly said, Sect Master Li, you should hand over that evil creature. Don't destroy the harmony of the 4 great sects for a lowlife. In the distance, Lin Tian's face turned cold. Bastard. At the same time, another voice sounded. Tu Miao unhappily said, Who are you calling lowlife? You old witch are the one who is lowlife. Looking at your wrinkled face and sinister eyes, this old woman thought she saw a ghost. Saying this, Tu Miao curled her lips with a disdainful expression. Her ridicule could not be more obvious. What did you say? Su Yu was instantly furious. Tu Miao sneered. I'm calling you a sinister woman. No, a sinister old witch. Su Yu was furious. Her sword Qi soared into the sky as she glared at Tu Miao. Sect Master Li, please hand that person over to the 100 Refinements Workshop. The 100 Refinements Workshop will thank you. The 100 Refinements Workshop Master said. The Burning Sun Sect Master's expression was cold. The strongest secret technique of the 100 Refinements Workshop, not to mention the people of other sects, even most of the people in the 100 Refinements Workshop can't cultivate it. Let me ask you, how can my Burning Sun sect's disciple obtain the 100 Refinements secret technique? Let me give you a piece of advice. After living for so long, don't be too shameless. Please return. The 100 Refinements Workshop Master still narrowed his eyes, his expression not changing. Sect Master Li, do you want to take the strongest secret technique of the 100 Refinements Workshop? A person from the 100 Refinements Workshop coldly said. This person was called Luo Gao. His cultivation was at Zephyr Tier 3, and he was an elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop. What a joke! The Burning Sun Sect Master's expression turned even colder. You saw someone use a technique similar to the 100 Refinements secret technique, so you insist that it's a martial technique of the 100 Refinements Workshop and want to take it away. Do you really think that the people of the Burning Sun sect are fools? I'll say it again. Don't be too shameless. Please return. Luo Gao's expression immediately darkened, becoming slightly cold. Since Sect Master Li insists on protecting the thief who stole the secret technique of the 100 Refinements Workshop, then we can only take it by force. The 100 Refinements Workshop Master said. You can try, the Burning Sun Sect Master coldly said. At the same time, the 4 elders behind the Burning Sun Sect Master emitted a cold aura. Seeing this scene, the expressions of some of the disciples of the Burning Sun Sect changed drastically. Are they going to fight? They're all Zephyr Tier powerhouses. Many people were shocked. The destructive power of a battle between Zephyr Tier powerhouses was very terrifying. Many people could not help but retreat into the distance. On the side of the 100 Refinements Workshop, an elder said, Spread out your divine sense and find that little bastard first. Found him. Almost in an instant, Yi Zhengshang spoke. The divine sense of a Zephyr Tier powerhouse was very amazing. With just a sweep, Yi Zhengshang found Lin Tian's location. In a flash, he flashed in front of Lin Tian and raised his hand to grab him. Lin Tian's expression changed slightly, and he quickly retreated. Yi Zhengshang sneered, and the speed of his attack increased. Get lost! A cold voice sounded. Luo Yu appeared in front of Lin Tian in a flash and slapped out with his palm. The 2 Zephyr Tier powerhouses collided. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew, shattering several old trees nearby. Yi Zhengshang was blasted away, and Luo Yu also retreated a few steps. Thank you, Elder Luo. Lin Tian stepped forward to thank him. It was a little dangerous just now. He did not expect Yi Zhengshang to rush towards him in an instant. His speed was too fast. Luo Yu waved his hand and said with a smile, No problem. It's what I should do. As he said that, Luo Yu looked at Yi Zhengshang opposite him. Does the 7 Mysteries Pavilion Master know that you're involved in this mess? Helping the 100 Refinements Workshop take back the stolen secret method. The Pavilion Master will support my actions. Yi Zhengshang said indifferently. In that case, you're acting on your own. The 100 Refinements Workshop has given you a lot of benefits, right? Luo Yu said. Yi Zhengshang's eyes narrowed. I don't understand what you're talking about. Luo Yu shook his head. Hypocrite. Hypocrite, blind, and shameless. You're just such a person. Lin Tian continued Luo Yu's words at this time, saying, back then, he fancied a treasured disciple in the Northern Flame Imperial City and wanted to recruit him to the 7 Mysteries Pavilion. In the end, that person relied on the fact that he was fancied by the sect and did whatever he wanted. In order to steal my treasured medicine, he provoked me. In the end, he was defeated by me with a few steps between us. In the end, he even died at my hands. At that time, he wanted to kill me, but unfortunately, he did not succeed. In the Valley of the Harp, his other treasured disciple, the Seven Mysteries Pavilion's Di Wenhong, was also crushed by me with a distance of 2 steps between us. He must have felt even more uncomfortable in his heart because it was too embarrassing, right? Naturally, his desire to kill me increased a little. As he said that, he looked at Yi Jingshang. Am I right, Signory? He enunciated the word senior especially loudly, and the sarcasm was very thick. What? This guy crushed the Seven Mysteries Pavilion's Di Wenhong with a distance of 2 steps between us? That Di Wenhong is a core disciple of the Seven Mysteries Pavilion. Hearing Lin Tian's words, many of the Burning Sun sect's disciples' expressions changed, and their eyes widened. Luo Yu looked at Yi Jingshang. There's such a thing? It was unknown whether Luo Yu asked this on purpose or not, but in short, Yi Jingshang's face became completely gloomy. Ha 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 ha, as expected of that brat's disciple. He's really strong. Tu Qing laughed loudly. This laughter was undoubtedly very ear-piercing to Yi Jingshang's ears. What a sharp-tongued junior. Everyone, take him down. The 100 Refinements Lane Master said. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All of a sudden, all the flight powerhouses, including the owner of the 100 Refinements District, charged toward Lin Tian. Little bastard. Su Yu's eyes were sinister, and her cheeks were ice-cold. It was also at this time that a cold snort sounded. What kind of place do you think my Burning Sun sect is? Do you think you can just barge in as you wish? The Burning Sun sect master yelled. As his words fell, the entire Burning Sun sect shook with a boom. In an instant, runes appeared in every corner of the Burning Sun sect. Then, dazzling beams of light shot up. Each beam of light was filled with boundless murderous intent. Great Mountain Protection Array. A Burning Sun sect disciple cried out in surprise. Lin Tian was a little surprised. He glanced around, and his heart couldn't help but freeze. He was an array manipulator himself, and at the 4th rank. Naturally, he could sense the terror of this great array. Although it was only a 6th rank killing array, there was more than one engraved. It seemed like there were 5 or 6 of them gathered together, and it was very terrifying. A group of shameless old things. Today, I'll have to give you a good beating, Tu Cheng said coldly. At this time, the leaders of the Burning Sun sect all had unfriendly expressions. However, in the midst of such a terrifying killing array, the people of the 100 Refinements Lane appeared very calm. Beat us? I'm afraid that's impossible. The 100 Refinements Lane Master said indifferently. As his words fell, the Burning Sun sect shook again. The killing light that rushed up from the ground was instantly shattered, and some of the runes that were originally lit dimmed instantly. The Burning Sun sect master and the others all had a change of expression. What's going on? The Burning Sun sect's Great Mountain Protection Array actually failed. Sect master. In the distance, a deacon of the Burning Sun sect, covered in blood, staggered over. The array core runes of the Great Array have been destroyed. Deacons Hua, Xian, and Ling. A sword ray flew from behind, cutting off the deacon's head. Chapter 256. Looking at the 3 and the swords in their hands, Lin Tianyi instantly guessed something. No pop-up window. The destruction of the Great Formation was definitely related to these 3. Zhuoshang, Chu Xian, Ling Yi. What are you doing? The Burning Sun sect master's face was ashen. At this moment, everyone from the Burning Sun sect paled. On the other hand, the people from 100 Refinements Workshop were indifferent. Clearly, everything was under their control. Zhuoshang and the other 2 retreated behind the people from 100 Refinements Workshop. Zhuoshang said, "Sorry, sect master. We were forced to do this." Zhuoshang stared at Lin Tian and gritted his teeth. If he doesn't die, he will definitely kill us in the future. We only temporarily destroyed the core of the Great Formation. Everything was for self-preservation. Moreover, Owner Gu promised us that we could enter 100 Refinements Workshop to cultivate and give us many treasures. This is much better than staying in the Burning Sun sect. What did you say? The elders of the Burning Sun sect were furious. Tu Miao clenched his fists and glared behind the people from 100 Refinement's workshop. Ling Yi, how dare you? A few days ago, he had begged him to bring a disciple to cultivate. A disciple he had taught for more than a year was now a traitor of the sect. Ling Ye's face was gloomy. A few days ago, after learning that Lin Tian was Li Chongfeng's disciple, his expression had been unsightly. After Zhuishang and Chu Xian discovered this, they secretly came looking for him. At that time, Zhuishang and Chu Xian had already been bribed by 100 Refinement's workshop. When the two learned that Ling Yi and Lin Tian did not get along, they instigated Ling Yi to kill Lin Tian. When Ling Yi thought of Li Chongfeng standing behind Lin Tian, of Lin Tian's strength, and of the generous conditions offered by 100 Refinement's workshop, he immediately agreed. Thus, on this day, when the protective formation was activated, the three of them worked together to destroy the core of the Great Formation. This was the only thing that 100 Refinement's workshop had asked them to do. As long as there was no mountain protecting array, the 100 Refinement's workshop had a 100% chance of taking Lin Tian away. He is Li Chongfeng's disciple. You will definitely protect him with all your strength. With his personality, he will definitely kill me in the future. You won't do anything about it. Maybe you will even help him. Ling Yi looked at Tu Ming and said, just like a few days ago, he hurt me, but you didn't help me at all. You even smiled at him. You don't have a disciple like me in your heart. In your heart, he is more important because he is Li Chongfeng's disciple. Bastard, you were the one who made the first move. If you lose, then you lose. How can you ask Master to help you vent your anger? Tu Miao's face was full of anger. Didn't I tell you to cultivate harder? When you're stronger, you can beat him yourself. I wanted to ask the sect for an assembled God's Baodan for you, but I didn't expect you to betray the sect like this. Whatever you say, Ling Yi said coldly. Tu Ming's old face was extremely unsightly. His whole body was trembling. Evil disciple, evil disciple. I, Tu Miao, have lived an honest and upright life, but I actually taught such a disciple. I have let down the sect. At this moment, Tu Miao seemed to have aged a lot in an instant. You may know a person for a long time without understanding his true nature. Elder Tu, you don't have to be like this. The Burning Sun sect master said. Although he said this, the Burning Sun sect master's expression was also very unsightly. His eyes were very cold. There was nothing more infuriating than being bitten by a core disciple that his sect had carefully nurtured. The 100 Refinement's district master stared at the Burning Sun sect master and said, Sect Master Li, it's better to hand that person over. Don't hurt our friendship. You destroyed my sect's protective mountain array, and now you're saying don't hurt our friendship? The Burning Sun sect master's face was cold. If you had handed him over from the beginning, how would things have turned out like this? The 100 Refinement's district master shook his head and said, no matter what, the 100 Refinement's secret technique is the foundation of our 100 Refinement's district. It can't fall into the hands of others. Today, our 100 Refinement's district must take this disciple of your sect away. Then give it a try. The Burning Sun sect master said coldly. With a boom, powerful spiritual ether seeped out of his body, and the entire space became scorching hot. It seems that we can only take him by force. The 100 Refinement's district master said. As soon as the 100 Refinement's district master's words fell, several other figures suddenly moved, including Jingshang of the Seven Mysteries Pavilion and Suyu of the Valley of the Harp, all pressed towards Lin Tian, wanting to capture Lin Tian. The Burning Sun sect master slashed out with his sword and stopped the 100 Refinement's district master. Today, you can't protect him. The 100 Refinement's district master said. I'll protect him for you to see. The Burning Sun sect master said. The two airborne realm fighters, the masters of the two sects, took to the air and clashed with each other. Almost at the same time, Luo Yu of the Burning Sun sect stopped Yi Jingshang. Yang Xiao and Zhao Huo blocked Luo Gao and another elder of the 100 Refinement's district respectively. Tu Qiong blocked Su Yu of the Valley of the Harp. It seems that you're not doing a good job as a master. Even your disciple has betrayed you. Su Yu sneered. Tu Cheong was still brooding over this matter. When he heard this, he immediately became furious. "You're courting death." Boom! The two of them fought, and a murderous aura suddenly spread in all directions. At this time, all the disciples of the Burning Sun sect were stunned. They were shocked by this scene. Run, get back. Go to the Demon Sealing Gorge. Someone shouted. Suddenly, all the ordinary disciples of the Burning Sun sect retreated towards the Demon Sealing Gorge, fearing that they would be affected by the battle. After all, there were 10 airborne realm powerhouses. The impact of these 10 people fighting together was too terrifying. Lin Tian stared at the sky, clenching his fists tightly. Then his cold gaze swept towards Wushang and the other two. If these three had not destroyed the core of the Burning Sun sect's mountain-protecting formation, the Burning Sun sect master and the others would not have fallen into a bitter battle. Little B Asterisk starred. At this time, a cold snore was heard. In the distance, another elder of the 100 Refinements District, Mu Hong, was approaching Lin Tian. Suddenly, Lin Tianji felt a mountain-like weight on his body, causing his heart to sink. "A few juniors want to start a war between the sects?" An old voice was heard. At the back mountain of the Burning Sun sect, a white-haired old man stepped on the void and walked over. "Supreme Elder!" The disciples of the Burning Sun sect were pleasantly surprised. As the Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect walked out, the entire space shook, causing the master of the 100 Refinements District and the others to be shocked. A powerhouse of the 9th heaven of the levitating realm is indeed terrifying, the master of the 100 Refinements District said. Even so, the master of the 100 Refinements District's expression was still very calm. At this time, another old man silently appeared in the distance. He wore a purple robe and walked towards the Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect. "I just want to take back my 100 Refinements District's secret technique. I don't mean to start a war between the sections. The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements District. You guys are really well prepared. Even an old fart like you came." The Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect's face darkened. "The Burning Sun sect has you overseeing it. If I didn't come, wouldn't they be defeated in an instant?" The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements District said. "After all, we are of the same generation. Old friend, you should hand over that disciple called Lin Tian. Don't destroy the friendly relationship between our two sects because of a mere inter-sect disciple. I don't remember being friends with you. Doing such a thing, let alone the word friendly," the Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect said. The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements District narrowed his eyes. "So, old friend, you don't want to?" The Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect stared at the opposite side and calmly shouted, "All deacons and elders of the Burning Sun sect, listen to my order. Protect Lin Tian at all costs." 100 years ago, the Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect had always blamed himself for driving away the most talented man in the sect. Now that that man had sent back a disciple, he must protect him well. The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements District narrowed his eyes. "Protect him at all costs? Unfortunately, you can't do it. Without the protective mountain formation, our battle prowess is clearly stronger than yours. All of your resistance will be futile. Who knows if you don't try?" the Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect said. Instantly, the two of them restrained each other and rushed to a higher place in the sky. Lin Tian stared at the sky while feeling very grateful in his heart, because these people were fighting for his sake. A cold aura pressed down from the front. Mu Hong's expression was incomparably cold, and his aura was like a knife. "You killed my grandson. I should kill you directly, but before that, there are many things I need to know from you, so I'll cripple your limbs first." Lin Tian stared at Mu Hong. Although his back was slightly cold, he didn't retreat. He stood in place like a monument and looked coldly at Mu Hong. "You trash grandson of trash. You deserve to die. But then again, I really regret it because I should have killed him with my own hands. Letting him poison himself to death is too easy for him." Staring at Mu Hong, he wasn't afraid at all, and his voice was very cold. Mu Hong's expression suddenly became gloomy, and his killing intent wandered. "You're courting death," Mu Hong said coldly. Lin Tian disdainfully said, "You're talking as if you're not going to kill me after capturing me. Idiot!" In terms of combat strength, he was far from being Mu Hong's opponent, but he didn't want to lose in words. Even if he couldn't beat him, he had to feel comfortable scolding him. Mu Hong's expression became even colder, as if he knew that he couldn't win against Lin Tian. He stopped talking and walked forward step by step. "Lin Tian, retreat to the Demon's Ceiling Gorge. There's a more hidden passage there. Leave with Deacon Liu. Go quickly." With Puan as the leader, several deacons blocked in front of Lin Tian. At the same time, another person came from the side. It was Deacon Liu. He pulled Lin Tian and prepared to retreat. "I'm not going." Lin Tian stared ahead, not moving at all. Deacon Liu said anxiously, "What are you saying? You're still too young. You can't stop Zephyr powerhouses. You're only in the spiritual sea realm. The Grand Elder ordered us to protect you. They're buying time for you. I'll take you away." Deacon Liu said, "They're coming for you. Only if you leave, this battle might end directly. Go quickly." "Impossible." Lin Tian shook his head and stared straight ahead. In order to protect him, the Burning Sun sect master and others were fighting with the people of 100 Refinement's workshop. How could he leave? "Go quickly," Puan shouted. Seeing Mu Hong closing in, Puan and several others rushed up together. "You want to stop me with just you?" Mu Hong waved his hand, and a gust of wind rolled up palm shadows all over the sky. Puan and the others were all blown away in an instant. Puan and the others were sent flying, each of them coughing up blood. After being hit by a palm from an airborne realm powerhouse, each of them had a lot of bones broken. They looked a little embarrassed, and it was difficult for them to stand up again. Mu Hong came close and raised his hand to grab Lin Tian. "Go," Deacon Liu said and waved his fist forward to block. "You're courting death." Mu Hong's eyes were cold. Seeing that Deacon Liu's fist was about to collide with Mu Hong's big hand, Lin Tian stretched out his left hand and pulled Deacon Liu back. Although Deacon Liu was older than him, his cultivation was only at the 3rd level of the Sea of Consciousness, which was much weaker than him. If he were to meet Mu Hong's palm, he would definitely suffer unimaginable damage. Lin Tian, Deacon Liu was slightly shocked. Lin Tian's face was solemn, but he didn't say anything. He pulled Deacon Liu back with his left hand, and the Heart Spirit sword appeared in his right hand. With a clang, he directly used the Thunder Fire sword to the limit. A bright sword aura slashed out, shaking the air. Deacon Liu was moved. This sword was indeed a little terrifying. Mu Hong's eyes flickered. Obviously, he didn't expect that a cultivator at the 4th level of the Sea of Consciousness could slash out such a terrifying sword. However, he was only surprised for a moment. After that, the big hand he stretched out did not change direction. With a slight shake, it shattered Lin Tian's sword aura. Although a firefly is occasionally bright, it is still a firefly in the end. How can it compete with the bright moon? With a cold voice, Mu Hong slapped Lin Tian with his palm. End of chapter. Chapter 257. Lin Tian felt an extremely terrifying pressure coming from the seemingly light palm. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on him. Without the slightest hesitation, he slashed with his long sword and quickly retreated to the back. "Humph!" Mu Hong snorted coldly and broke apart Lin Tian's sword aura. His momentum did not diminish as he pressed down on Lin Tian. "Watch out!" Deacon Liu shouted and rushed up. Lin Tian frowned, grabbed Deacon Liu's shoulder, and threw him behind him. "Don't come over." He was very grateful for Deacon Liu's kindness. However, Deacon Liu was much weaker than him. He would definitely be in trouble if he were to fight Mu Hong. "You have guts." Mu Hong sneered, and the force of his palm seemed to be even more powerful. Lin Tian shook his Heart Spirit sword. The Thunder Flame sword aura swept out like a storm in the sky. However, facing an airborne realm fighter, his terrifying attack seemed to be a bit weak. It was instantly shattered by Mu Hong's palm force. Then, A wisp of palm force passed through the thunderflame sword aura and landed directly on his body. Lin Tianyi was shocked, and a mouthful of blood surged up to his throat. Old thing! He stared at Mu Hong and clenched the treasure in his hand. He felt a trace of powerlessness when facing Mu Hong. Even so, there was no fear in his eyes. Therefore, this expression made Mu Hong very unhappy. Let's see how long you can last. Mu Hong's voice was cold. Facing Lin Tian, Mu Hong did not draw his sword. He just slapped with his bare hands again and again. However, even so, Lin Tian was still forced to keep retreating. In just a short while, his hand holding the sword was already a little numb from the shock. With a clang, a sword aura suddenly appeared behind Mu Hong. Puyin came from behind him. Lin Tian, back off! Puyin shouted. Mu Hong glanced behind him and snorted coldly. He slapped behind him with a backhand palm, directly breaking Puyin's sword. After that, Mu Hong once again waved his palm, which landed firmly on Puyin's chest. Puyin was directly sent flying 8 feet away, lying horizontally on the ground. Blood kept flowing out of his mouth, and his aura instantly weakened to the lowest point. Lin Tian's expression changed. Senior Pu, just take care of yourself. An indifferent voice sounded. Mu Hong waved his palm again, pressing down on Lin Tian. Lin Tian's face turned cold. He didn't hesitate to use his weapon control technique. Along with the sound of swords clanging, 15 bejeweled swords suddenly rushed out like 15 lightning bolts towards Mu Hong. Although he hadn't been in the sect for long, he was quite familiar with Puyin and was also good to him. Seeing Puyin seriously injured and dying, killing intent erupted in his eyes. Sure enough, he can control many weapons with one hand. Mu Hong's eyes flashed. Mu Hong still didn't draw his sword. He only used his hands to attack Lin Tian. Lin Tian channeled his spiritual sense and urged the 15 bejeweled swords to continuously slash at Mu Hong, attacking from all angles. However, the airborne realm cultivator was too strong. No matter how he attacked, he couldn't hurt Mu Hong at all. He couldn't even scratch the corner of Mu Hong's clothes. Cultivation determines everything. You're still too weak, Mu Hong said. With a bang, Mu Hong slapped out with his palm and knocked all of Lin Tian's bejeweled swords away in an instant. With the bejeweled swords being knocked away, Lin Tian's spiritual sense was shaken, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Staring at Mu Hong, he just held the heart spirit sword tighter. The airborne realm cultivator was really too terrifying. Now, he could only feel powerless when facing the airborne realm cultivator. His opponent was like an ancient demonic mountain, which was difficult to shake. However, even though he knew this, he did not shrink back. He did not cower, because it was meaningless. Still want to fight? Stubborn resistance, Mu Hong said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Hong slapped again. Lin Tian channeled his spiritual sense, and the sword vibrated again, supporting the 15 bejeweled swords to resist. In the process, Mu Hong's palm slapped away the 15 bejeweled swords again and again, causing Lin Tian to suffer some backlash each time. Blood kept flowing out of the corner of his mouth. Even so, it still made the disciples of the Burning Sun sect feel shocked. Facing the airborne realm cultivator, where did he get the courage to fight? He can actually hold on until now. Many people were shocked. Some people thought about it from another perspective. If they were facing an airborne realm cultivator, they would probably be so scared that their legs would go weak. Even if that was not the case, they definitely wouldn't have the courage to fight, because even if they gave it their all, it would be useless. But now, facing such a situation, Lin Tian was not afraid at all. The long sword in his hand slashed at the airborne realm cultivator again and again. Doesn't he know what fear is? Some people's hearts trembled. Watching the battle between Lin Tian and Mu Hong, everyone in the Burning Sun sect had different expressions. Ling Yi stared at Lin Tian, clenching his fists. His face was extremely gloomy because Lin Tian's combat strength at the moment was too terrifying. Although his cultivation level was higher than Lin Tian's, he knew very well that his combat strength was far from that of Lin Tian. On the other side, Zhuishang and Chu Xian's faces were pale. They were both shocked by the combat strength that was far beyond that of a cultivator of the same level. His talent is really good. What a monster! Yi Zhengshang of the Seven Mysteries Pavilion glanced at Lin Tian's direction while fighting Luo Yu and said, "Unfortunately, what's the use of this?" Against Mu Hong, who is in the airborne realm, the outcome is already decided. As he said that, Yi Zhengshang swung his blade, and dense blade auras sputtered in all directions. Luo Yu avoided most of the blade auras, but there were still some that rushed over from all corners. Suddenly, many pavilions in the Burning Sun sect were shattered, and cracks appeared on the ground. There were even a few outer disciples of the Burning Sun sect who couldn't dodge in time and were directly crushed by the blade auras. Seeing this scene, many disciples of the Burning Sun sect couldn't help but tremble. They were shocked and angry. Yi Zhengshang. Luo Yu was furious for the first time. Yi Zhengshang frowned slightly, but then he coldly snorted, "Just a few weaklings." The sword in Luo Yu's hand trembled, and his killing intent surged. "You deserve to die." Although Lin Tian was blocking Mu Hong's attack and had suffered serious injuries, he still paid attention to that direction. Seeing several of his fellow sect members die at the hands of Yi Zhengshang, his eyes were filled with endless anger. To be honest, these few Burning Sun sect disciples were also involved in this chaotic battle because of him. Bastard. He had killed a lot of people, but this didn't mean that he didn't know the value of life. He could kill his enemies without batting an eyelid, but when he saw several ordinary fellow sect members die for no reason, anger still rose in his heart. Mu Hong indifferently said, "Do you have time to look elsewhere?" At this time, a long sword appeared beside Mu Hong. The sword swung, as if it was going to cut open space. Lin Tian felt an even stronger pressure and was forced to retreat step by step. The Burning Sun sect master and the others all noticed this scene, and their faces were filled with anger. Some people wanted to help, but they couldn't. After all, everyone was facing an opponent who wasn't weaker than them, or even stronger. Higher up in the sky, the 100 Refinements Workshop's Great Elder restrained the Burning Sun sect's Great Elder and indifferently said, "How about it? I said that today. He can only be suppressed and taken away." The Burning Sun sect's Great Elder swept a glance at Lin Tian. Seeing that Lin Tian was injured by Mu Hong again and again, his eyes became incomparably sharp and cold. "If he is harmed today, my Burning Sun sect and your 100 Refinements Workshop will fight to the death." After saying this, the Burning Sun sect's Great Elder emitted an even stronger aura, and the clouds in the sky were shaken. The 100 Refinements Workshop's Great Elder frowned. "Why do you go to this extent for a mere inner disciple? Is it because he is Li Changfeng's disciple?" Li Changfeng was very monstrous back then, but didn't he already leave the Burning Sun sect? Although I don't know why, in the end, he can only say that he was once a member of your Burning Sun sect. Now, he basically has nothing to do with your Burning Sun sect, right? Moreover, it is said that he is now crippled and only enjoys drinking all day long. His strength is about the same as the current Yi Zhengshang. Is the disciple of such a person worth all of you doing this? The Burning Sun sect's Great Elder was furious, who said that he left the Burning Sun sect. "He will be a member of my Burning Sun sect until his death." The Burning Sun sect's Great Elder was furious, and the entire sky seemed to be enveloped by flames, scorching and threatening. "I don't understand." The 100 Refinements Workshop's Great Elder shook his head, but his expression became more dignified. He directly used the 100 Refinements secret technique, and suddenly, dozens of weapons flew through the sky, slashing towards the Burning Sun sect's Great Elder. The two people fought together, causing everyone's heart to tremble. This was a collision of peak Zephyr realm experts. Clang! At this time, in another place, the clanging sound of swords rang out again. Lin Tian, who was fighting against Mu Hong with his Sea of Consciousness realm cultivation, was forced to retreat step by step, and many more wounds appeared on his body. "It's about time," Mu Hong said. In the next moment, for long swords suddenly appeared beside Mu Hong, and rushed towards Lin Tian's limbs with a whoosh. The four long swords were as fast as birds. Such a scene made the Burning Sun sect leader's expression change. Lin Tian could not avoid these four swords. Damn it! In a battlefield slightly close to Lin Tian, Tu Yao risked being hit by Su Yu's sword to change his position, and rushed down from the sky, blocking in front of Lin Tian by a hair's breadth. Because he rushed over from a distance, he was hit by Su Yu's heavy sword. In addition, Mu Hong's sword was very fast, so he could only use his body to block. Pooh! 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 Four long swords pierced into Tu Yao's body at the same time, but fortunately, at the most critical moment, Tu Yao dodged slightly, and the four long swords did not hurt his vital parts. Even so, it still made the airborne realm expert wobble a few times, almost falling to the ground. Lin Tian was shocked and hurriedly supported Tu Yao, Sr. Tu Yao coughed up blood and painfully pulled out the four long swords in his body. Grinning at Lin Tian, "Kid, when you see your master in the future, tell him that I, Tu Yao, have returned the favor I owed him in the past." Saying this seemed to have affected his injuries. Tu Yao's body shook a few more times, and the four wounds continued to bleed. Such a scene caused everyone to be moved. "I'm quite surprised that an airborne realm expert like you would use your body to block my sword for a junior. It's really strange." Mu Hong walked over step by step, with a slight sneer on his face. "But this is better." Calculating it, your Burning Sun sect temporarily lost an airborne realm combatant, and it will be easier to take him away. In your dreams, even if I die here, I'll take half of your life with me," Tu Bei said. As he said this, Tu Yao took a deep breath and took a step forward, obviously wanting to block Mu Hong. At this moment, a hand grabbed him. Lin Tian pulled Tu Yao and stared at Mu Hong. In the blink of an eye, his glabella shone brightly, and dense lotus petals floated out from his glabella, lingering in every corner within a radius of about 10 feet. Then, the dense lotus petals quickly gathered toward the center, condensing into a 7-inch-long lotus sword in 3 breaths, bright and dazzling. "Cut!" He gritted his teeth and shouted. The lotus sword rushed up and instantly pressed in front of Mu Hong. P.S. Tomorrow 5 update. Chapter 258. Read on mobile. The Lotus Broadsword was dazzling, and its speed was extremely fast, causing Mu Hong's expression to change slightly. However, it was only for a moment. Mu Hong took a step back and raised the long sword in his hand. "Your speed is indeed good, but do you really think that a sea of consciousness-level attack can work on a flight expert? You're really naive." As he spoke, Mu Hong slashed down with his sword. This sword steadily landed on the Lotus Broadsword. Mu Hong's expression was indifferent, but in the next moment his expression changed because his long sword could not stop the Lotus Broadsword at all. The Lotus Broadsword passed through the sword in his hand and went straight to him. "Impossible!" Mu Hong was shocked. At the same time, the expressions of others also changed because they all saw that Mu Hong's sword clearly cut the Lotus Broadsword, but it was not able to damage the Lotus Broadsword in the slightest. At this time, the Lotus Broadsword was already in front of Mu Hong, and there was no way for him to dodge. Psst! With a soft sound, the Lotus Broadsword went straight into Mu Hong's head. There was no bloody blooming as expected, but in the next moment, Mu Hong let out a blood-curdling scream and staggered backward. His hands were clutching his hair, as if he was suffering some kind of horrible torture. "What's going on? This is what happened." Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked, including the Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect and the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinement Square. Behind Tu Yao, Lin Tian's eyes were cold. He let go of Tu Yao's hand and instantly rushed out like lightning. At this moment, the speed he showed shocked the group of airborne realm experts. In an instant, he was in front of Mu Hong. "I'm going to kill you." Lin Tian's voice was cold. He clenched his right hand into a fist and directly punched out. With a bang, this punch landed solidly on Mu Hong's chest, causing him to scream again and spit out a mouthful of blood. Lin Tian's fist strength today might not be able to hurt an airborne realm expert, But in fact, the fist he threw was not ordinary. It was a divine Vane realm martial art, the meteorite fist. This fist technique looked ordinary, but it contained residual force, attacking the outside and injuring the inside. Bang! Another punch landed on Mu Hong's body, sending him flying more than 10 meters away. However, this was not the end. After Lin Tian gained the upper hand, he did not stop at all. He did not give Mu Hong the slightest chance to recover. In an instant, he closed in on him again. His face was cold as he clenched his fists. Every punch carried all of his strength. Like crazy raindrops, they continuously fell on Mu Hong's body. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed. That's a mighty one at the airborne realm. Is he suppressing a mighty one at the airborne realm? Crazy, really crazy. Some of the Burning Sun sect disciples were dumbfounded. Tu Miao's body was wounded, and blood was flowing from his wounds. As he stared at this scene, his eyes flickered uncontrollably. What kind of person is this young man? Tu Ming murmured. How big was the gap between a cultivation at the 4th level of the Sea of Consciousness and a mighty one at the 3rd level of the airborne realm? It was simply the difference between heaven and earth. It was a gap that could not be crossed no matter what. But now, in front of this gap that could not be crossed, a young man who had just turned 17 years old stepped over it. With his cultivation at the 4th level of the Sea of Consciousness, he was actually suppressing a mighty one at the 3rd level of the airborne realm. Bang! 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 The sound of fists falling on flesh continued to be heard, and Mu Hong's screams continued to reverberate. At this moment, Lin Tian was almost using Mu Hong as a punching bag. His fists fell on Mu Hong's body as if they were nothing. This scene shocked everyone's heart. Clang! The sound of a sword rang out. In Lin Tian's hand, a cold sword appeared and slashed at Mu Hong's neck. Stop him! The owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop came back to his senses and immediately shouted. Su Yu was the closest, and no one stopped her. In an instant, she flashed over and slashed out with her sword. You have a lot of demonic techniques. Staring at Lin Tian, the murderous intent in Su Yu's eyes intensified. At the same time, Su Yu thought of the white lotus that floated out from Lin Tian's glabella. She felt that it was very similar to the White Lotus Sword Codex. But after thinking about it again, she felt that it was definitely not the White Lotus Sword Codex. As Su Yu pressed forward, Lin Tian suddenly felt the pressure. He could suppress Mu Hong at this time because the Lotus Sword had injured Mu Hong's Sea of Consciousness, causing Mu Hong to lose his combat strength in an instant. Now that he was facing Su Yu in her prime, he was naturally no match for her. He could only step on the yin-yang avatar and retreat a few feet away. Old woman, staring at Su Yu, his eyes were cold. Originally, he was only a hair away from killing Mu Hong, but unfortunately, it was ruined. You're courting death. Su Yu's face turned cold, and she directly pressed on Lin Tian. The long sword in Lin Tian's hand vibrated, and the flaming thunder sword slashed out wildly. At the same time, his glabella lit up again. Dense lotus petals floated out and filled the air. Once again, it condensed into a lotus sword and slashed straight at Su Yu. Be careful. This thing can directly attack the Sea of Consciousness. A weak voice sounded. Not far away, Mu Hong's mouth was bleeding, and his body was full of bruises caused by fists. He had finally recovered slightly. Because he had been hit by Lin Tian's sword, Mu Hong naturally knew what kind of power this lotus sword had. Su Yu's expression changed, and she quickly dodged, passing by the lotus sword, directly attacking the Sea of Consciousness. How is that possible? Su Yu's expression changed. At this time, hearing Mu Hong's words, everyone, including the Great Elder of the Burning Sun sect and the Great Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop, changed their expressions. For a cultivator, the importance of the Sea of Consciousness was self-evident. It could even be said that it was more important than the heart. Being able to directly attack the Sea of Consciousness was terrifying. How can it be? Elder Mu Hong, are you mistaken? The master of the 100 Refinements Workshop said in a deep voice. At this time, The great elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop also looked at Mu Hong. What Mu Hong said was really too shocking. To be able to directly attack the Sea of Consciousness, they had never heard of such a method. At least, there was absolutely no such method below the Immortal Ascension realm. But now, a cultivator in the Sea of Consciousness realm had mastered such a method? Mu Hong wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. It can't be wrong. Just now, that lotus sword directly broke into my Sea of Consciousness, causing my Sea of Consciousness to suffer an unimaginable shock. It was almost directly destroyed. Staring at Lin Tian again, Mu Hong's eyes no longer had the contempt at the beginning. In an instant, they were filled with shocking killing intent. Seeing Mu Hong like this, no one doubted him anymore. Thinking about it, Mu Hong, who was in the airborne realm, had personally suffered that sword attack. How could he be wrong? Damn it, that bastard. That was what he did to me that day. Ling Yi was extremely angry. A few days ago, in the Demon's Ceiling Gorge, he had suffered such an injury, but he didn't think too much about it. After all, it was just a small lotus petal. Now, hearing Mu Hong, who was in the airborne realm, mention it, he immediately remembered what happened that day, and his cheeks became distorted. Lin Tian was actually so strong. Not far away, Tu Ming also remembered what happened that day. So that's what happened. He directly attacked Ling Ye's Sea of Consciousness. No wonder I didn't find any injuries. Thinking at this time, Tu Ming couldn't help but glance at Ling Yi in the distance. Anger immediately appeared in his eyes. The disciple he had carefully nurtured had actually betrayed the sect. High in the sky, the great elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop stared at Lin Tian and shouted, "Catch him!" At this time, even this powerhouse of the Zephyr 9th celestial layer had a thick, killing intent in his eyes. He was only in the Sea of Knowledge realm, but he was able to comprehend a legendary method that could directly attack the Sea of Knowledge. This kind of talent was too monstrous. He was even stronger than Li Changfeng in the past. Such a person must not be allowed to live. Hearing this, everyone in the 100 Refinements Workshop naturally had a strong killing intent. Clang! 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 The sound of the sword was soul-stirring. In the sky above the burning sun sect, a dense number of weapons rushed out in an instant. Because of the help of Su Yu and Yi Jingshang, only 5 people from the 100 Refinements Workshop came this time. The Great Elder, the workshop owner, and 3 elders. At this moment, except for Mu Hong, everyone else displayed the 100 Refinements secret technique. Suddenly, more than 100 weapons floated in the sky above the burning sun sect. Among them, the weakest was a treasure, and there were even many treasures. The 100 Refinements secret technique used by the airborne realm powerhouse. So many weapons. How can we block this? How can we fight? It's over. The expressions of all the disciples of the Burning Sun sect changed. At this time, seeing this scene, even Su Yu and Yi Jingshang changed their expressions. They were obviously a little surprised, but soon, their gazes fell on Lin Tian, and a strong killing intent appeared in their eyes. This person must die. Boom! Almost at the same time, in the sky, another terrifying aura rushed up. The great elder of the Burning Sun sect held a treasure sword. Although there was only one sword, its power was not much weaker than the great elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop. Dense flaming sword chi condensed behind him, burning the air with a sizzling sound. Everyone of the Burning Sun sect, listen up. Protect Lin Tian at all costs. At all costs. You can't protect him. The great elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop said coldly and rushed over. Even if I have to sacrifice this old life of mine, I won't let you succeed. The great elder of the Burning Sun sect said. Lin Tian was not only Li Changfeng's only disciple, but his talent was also as monstrous as Li Changfeng's. No matter what, he had to protect Lin Tian, not only for Li Changfeng, but also for the sect. Ignorant, the great elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop coldly said. The two supreme powerhouses clashed, sword whistling and true essence exploding. The scene could only be described as frightening. At almost the same time, The battle between the master of the 100 Refinements Workshop and the Burning Sun Sect Masters group became more intense. But at this time, the gap between the two sides began to show. The members of the 100 Refinements Workshop who used the 100 Refinements secret technique were much stronger than cultivators of the same level. The master of the Burning Sun Sect Masters group began to be at a disadvantage and was forced to retreat. Crack! 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 A series of crisp sounds rang out. Many pavilions of the Burning Sun Sect were destroyed, and the ground was cut open inch by inch. More than 100 weapons crisscrossed, and the scene made the Burning Sun Sect disciples tremble in fear. Lin Tian stared at this scene and could not help but clench his fists. At this time, he finally understood why the 100 Refinements secret technique was called the most powerful technique of the four major sects. It was indeed too powerful. At this moment, relying on this technique, the members of the 100 Refinements Workshop were all suppressing their opponents, and the leaders of the Burning Sun Sect were all at a disadvantage. Humph! A cold voice sounded as Su Yu and Mu Hong closed in on Lin Tian. Su Yu's long sword shook as she directly used the white lotus sword cannon and swept Tu Bei, who was standing in front of Lin Tian. Damn it! Tu Bei was furious. Mu Hong closed in on Lin Tian, and the killing intent in his eyes was shockingly strong. He directly stepped over to Lin Tian. Because his knowledge C was injured by Lin Tian's Lotus Greatsword, he did not use the 100 Refinements secret technique at this moment. He only waved his palm at Lin Tian. However, even so, the injured him was still far stronger than Lin Tian, and Lin Tian could not contend against him. In a short period of time, Lin Tian was forced to continuously retreat. Pung! After dozens of breaths, Lin Tian was hit by a palm. He felt his chest spasm, and his internal organs were shattered. He took a step back, and his grip on the inner spirit's sword tightened, and he continuously slashed forward dozens of sword rays. You're really durable, Mu Hong said coldly. Because he wanted to get the information they wanted from Lin Tian, he naturally could not kill Lin Tian here. He held back a little when he attacked, but even so, he was still very surprised when Lin Tian could still move after taking a direct hit from him. But then, his face turned even colder, and he increased the strength of his palm. One more palm, and it's over. Let's see who can save you next. Lin Tian endured the pain in his chest and stepped on the yin and yang hua, constantly flashing. At the same time, the light between his eyebrows shone brightly, and dense lotus petals floated out, once again condensing into a lotus great sword and attacking Mu Hong. At the same time, some scattered lotus petals also gathered around, and together they slashed at Mu Hong, heading straight for his head. You want to use the same trick on me a second time? Mu Hong said coldly. He dodged Lin Tian's lotus great sword, and suddenly, dense palm shadows appeared again. In the distance, the Burning Sun Sect leader and the others saw that Lin Tian was in danger. They were all furious and wanted to go over to help. However, at this moment, no one could pass. At this time, several of the leaders had more or less suffered a lot of injuries. Even the Grand Elder of the Burning Sun Sect was hit several times, and his clothes were stained with blood. The experts of the Burning Sun Sect were completely suppressed. How could this be? Our Burning Sun Sect, could it be? Chapter 259. All the disciples of the Burning Sun Sect were stunned. Their expressions were dull, and many of them could not help but tremble. At this time, the 6 giants of the Burning Sun Sect were in a bitter battle. Even the Supreme Elder was slightly suppressed by the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop. How could this be? Someone murmured with a pale face. Lin Tian dodged Mu Hong's palm force while paying attention to all of this. He could not help but hold the inner spirit sword tighter. You're quite fast. Let's see how long you can dodge. Mu Hong said. Staring at Lin Tian, Mu Hong's eyes were a little cold because just now, he was indeed seriously injured by Lin Tian. At this moment, he could not even use the 100 Refinements secret technique, and his combat strength was greatly reduced. It was also because of this that he could not quickly suppress Lin Tian. Lin Tion's eyes were filled with anger, and the light between his eyebrows lit up again. He endured the pain in his body. This time, dense white lotuses floated out from between his eyebrows. They did not condense into swords. Instead, all the lotus petals floated in the air like swords of light. They drifted towards the people of the 100 Refinements Workshop, Su Yu and Yi Jingshang, respectively. His combat strength was far inferior to these people, but the white lotuses were enough to interfere with these people. Mu Hong's expression changed slightly, and he shouted, "Dodge directly, don't block." Having suffered Lin Tianyi's sword, Mu Hong was very familiar with this move. Buzz! The white lotus petals fluttered all over the sky as if it was raining white lotuses. They kept rolling towards the 100 Refinements Workshop owner and the others. The 100 Refinements Workshop owner and the others quickly dodged, and their expressions became slightly cold. If it were any other day, these white lotus petals would not cause too much trouble for them. However, each of them was facing a Zephyr powerhouse. At this time, facing this kind of thing that could directly attack the sea of consciousness brought them great trouble. One had to know that sometimes the power of a straw was enough to change many things. Chapter 260. Mu Hong's expression changed slightly. Thinking of Li Changfeng back then, he could not help but tremble. However, he immediately returned to normal and snorted, "I heard that you've been crippled all these years. Do you still think you're the same as before?" An old drunkard smiled and said, "Indeed, I'm not the same as before." He raised his long sword gently, and a faint light flashed through the inner spirit sword. Poof! Mu Hong's chest split open, and blood directly rose up. With a bang, Mu Hong flew backward and once again hit the old tree in the distance. Such a scene immediately caused many people's expressions to change. Was there a sword light just now? It seems like there wasn't. Many people's hearts palpitated. At this time, even the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop was moved. Even he did not see that sword clearly. Blood flowed out of Mu Hong's mouth as he staggered to his feet. Mu Hong's expression changed. He was injured by a sword, but he did not even see an old drunkard's movements clearly. An old drunkard shook the long sword in his hand. "I haven't held a sword for so many years. I'm not used to it." These words undoubtedly caused the hearts of everyone to be even more alarmed. Injuring a Zephyr powerhouse with a sword, this is called not used to it? Someone swallowed saliva. Lin Tian stared at an old drunkard's back, and his pupils could not help but narrow. So strong. At this time, Mu Hong's expression was naturally not so good, and he clenched his fists tightly. "You have to pay attention to the next sword." An old drunkard narrowed his eyes. As his words fell, a faint layer of flame appeared on the inner spirit sword. Mu Hong's expression changed, and he could not help but take a step back. "You want to kill me?" An old drunkard had a faint smile on his face and did not say anything. However, even so, it still gave Mu Hong a strong pressure. The past events of the past appeared in his heart, causing Mu Hong to feel a trace of fear. Clenching his fists, Mu Hong endured the discomfort and shook his sea of consciousness, activating the 100 Refinements secret technique of the 100 Refinements Workshop. Clang! 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 The sound of swords rang out continuously as dozens of weapons floated out. An old drunkard's expression didn't change at all. The flames on the inner spirit sword flickered fiercely and were immediately extinguished, returning to normal. There was no sword sound, no sword light. The old drunkard's sword slowly chopped down. What are you doing?" "Strange." Many people found it strange. Nothing seemed to be happening in front. Lin Tian also frowned, but he believed that since an old drunkard had swung his sword, he would not be doing something useless. Right at this moment, a crisp sound resounded. Crack! The sound of metal shattering shook the entire audience. In the next moment, similar sounds rang out continuously. The dozens of weapons floating around Mu Hong were instantly filled with cracks and shattered, falling to the ground. Then, in front of everyone's shocked eyes, A trace of blood flowed out from between Mu Hong's eyebrows. He fell straight to the ground, and his life force disappeared completely. Brat, now that you've vented your anger, is it going well? An old drunkard said. Lin Tian's body trembled, and his eyes were full of light. A one-hit kill. So strong. Yes, he replied. This was the former sword immortal of the Burning Sun sect, the man who had relied on his own strength to sweep all the geniuses of the four major sections. He was really too strong. Lin Tianji felt his blood boiling. Senior brother. The Burning Sun sect master clenched his fists in excitement. Senior brother was still so strong. Good. Tu Ming laughed. Tu Ming and the others were happy and excited, but the faces of the people of the 100 Refinements Workshop were stiff. A Zephyr powerhouse died, just like that. Junior, the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop, was furious. The dozens of weapons around him clanged and slashed at an old drunkard. This attack came too suddenly. Even the Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect could not stop it in time. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of the sword was ear-piercing, and the dozens of weapons flickered with killing light. That scene was extremely terrifying. After all, this was the 100 Refinement's secret technique used by the Zephyr Ninth Heaven powerhouse. Be careful, Lin Tiandao. An old drunkard grinned. With his back facing the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop, he swung his sword away. It was originally a sword slash, but it instantly created a sea of fire. The dozens of weapons that the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop had taken out were all swept away and fell to the ground. At this moment, the flames in the void were still burning. Everyone felt that every wisp of these flames was formed by a terrifying sword chi. The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop trembled. His weapon was blasted away, and he was slightly shaken. Staring at an old drunkard again, this Zephyr Ninth Heaven powerhouse revealed an expression of disbelief. His eyes could not help but flicker with shock. The Grand Elder's attack was actually instantly. The owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop was shocked. An old drunkard glanced at the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop from the corner of his eyes. Then he turned his head and looked around the Burning Sun sect. The place that I grew up in has been destroyed by you guys. It's really a headache. With that, an old drunkard carried his long sword and walked toward Su Yu, who was opposite Tu Mao. Li Changfeng, what are you trying to do? Su Yu's heart palpitated, and she could not help but take a step back. An old drunkard had killed Mu Hong with a single slash and repelled the Supreme Elder's 100 Refinements secret technique with a single slash. It could be said that his combat strength had instantly shocked everyone. A trace of fear appeared in Su Yu's eyes. I guess the Valley of the Harp won't blame me, an old drunkard said. Su Yu suddenly thought of something and immediately retreated, shooting out of the Burning Sun sect. In a flash, she was 100 feet away. An old drunkard narrowed his eyes, raised his heart-spirit sword, and slashed down in the air. A cloud of bloody mist exploded in the distance. It was enchanting and dazzling. Another flight realm expert had been killed. This, again with a single slash. Is this the legend of our Burning Sun sect? He's too strong. Many of the Burning Sun sect's disciples stared. At this time, the eyes of these Burning Sun sect's disciples were filled with excitement. Lin Tian's eyes flashed. Seeing an old drunkard kill 2 flight realm experts in a row, he felt that his blood was completely boiling. Because of that drop of wine from an old drunkard, his injuries were temporarily better. He immediately picked up a long sword from the ground, glanced at Ling Yi and the other 2, and walked towards the 3 of them step by step. Is he going to kill those 3 people? Bah! Those 3 bastards. But his injuries. Many of the Burning Sun sect's disciples were moved. At the same time, the expressions of Ling Yi and the other 2 changed again. Senior 2, can we kill them? Lin Tian asked. Tu Miao's body was stained with blood, so he naturally understood what Lin Tian was talking about. He said with a cold face, kill them. The disciple that he had carefully nurtured for so long had actually betrayed the sect. This made him feel humiliated, and the anger in his heart was stronger than anyone else's. After getting 2 meows affirmation, Lin Tian's eyes turned completely cold, and he took a step forward. Lin Tianyu, Xian retreated. After seeing Lin Tian's various methods, Xian's eyes were full of fear when facing Lin Tian again. Ling Yi and Zhuo Shang's expressions also changed slightly, but soon, both of them showed a ruthless look. What can you do with your current broken body? Compared to Xian, Zhuo Shang and Ling Yi were much stronger. After all, one of them was a deacon of the Burning Sun sect, and the other was a core disciple of the Burning Sun sect. Both of them were at the 5th level of the Sea of Consciousness. Lin Tian's expression was cold, and he took a step forward. Just killing 3 insects is enough. Clang! The thunderfire sword whistled. Lin Tian directly rushed over, and the long sword in his hand slashed out a dozen sword lights. Damn it! Ling Yi cursed. Zhuo Shang's expression was gloomy, and he pressed his sword toward Lin Tian. Xian trembled. Compared to Zhuo Shang and Ling Yi, he was much weaker. At this time, Lin Tian's body was covered in blood. When he rushed over like this, he looked like a demon god. Xian's heart couldn't help but jump, and he couldn't help but retreat. Lin Tian glanced at Xian. The long sword in his hand trembled, and he knocked away Zhuo Shang and Ling Ye's swords. In an instant, he arrived in front of Xian. Killing, start from the weakest. Lin Pu. A bloody light flashed, and Xian's head flew out diagonally. Lin Tian tilted his head, looking at Zhuo Shang and Ling Yi. Because of the slash, his injuries immediately worsened, and blood once again flowed out of his mouth. You dare to fight with us in this state? You're courting death. Ling Yi shouted. Although he said so, at this time, Ling Ye's face was ashen, and there was even a trace of fear in his eyes. On the other side, Zhuo Shang was the same. It's enough to kill you, Lin Tianlong said. With a flip of his sword, he charged towards the 2 of them expressionlessly. Ling Yi and Zhuo Shang were furious, and their eyes revealed a fierce light as they charged forward. That guy, he clearly suffered such heavy injuries, but he's still so strong. Many of the Burning Sun sect's disciples stared at Lin Tian, and their faces revealed expressions of worship. An old drunkard had been paying attention to Lin Tian all this time. Seeing this scene, he couldn't help but smile. You've only absorbed a little of the medicine. Fighting at this time is too difficult, kid. After a pause, an old drunkard smiled, even more happily. But I like it. This is the disciple of an old drunkard. At this time, an old drunkard temporarily stopped. Clang! In that direction, the sword whistled again. Although Lin Tian's mouth was bleeding, the battle intent on his body was awe-inspiring. He held an ordinary long sword in his hand, but every slash of the sword caused the air to hiss. The lightning flame sword light swept out in all directions, forcing Zhuo Shang and Ling Yi to retreat step by step. Ling Ye's expression was extremely ugly. Clang! 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 The swords collided continuously. After a while, with a crisp sound, the ordinary long sword in Lin Tian's hand broke. Lin Tian's expression didn't change at all. With a wave of his right hand, a spirit sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed straight ahead. At the same time, Lin Tian kicked out, landing directly on Zhuo Shang's chest. With a bang, Zhuo Shang was sent flying 3 feet away. Because the range of his movement was too large, Lin Tian felt his injuries worsen a little. A sharp pain hit his chest, causing a bloody taste to surge up his throat. However, his expression didn't change, and he forced it down. I'll finish you in half an hour, he said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, the space between his eyebrows lit up. White lotuses rushed out from between his eyebrows, blooming with a faint brilliance. Not far away, an old drunkard's expression changed for the first time. His eyes narrowed. This is... Chapter 261. You have 1 second to remember the literature building, which provides you with interesting novels to read. White lotuses floated out from between Lin Tian's eyebrows and floated in the air like lotus rain. An old drunkard was moved, and his eyes sparkled for the first time. However, a smile soon appeared on the old drunkard's face. Buzz! The white lotuses flew and made a buzzing sound. Zhuoshang and Ling Ye's expressions instantly changed when they saw this scene, especially Ling Yi. A few days ago, he had personally suffered the attack of these white lotuses. Just a single patch had caused him so much pain that he wished he was dead. However, at this moment, there was a dense pile of them. Ling Yi immediately retreated and dodged quickly with Zhuoshang. Lin Tian looked cold and indifferent. He took a step forward and crossed the distance. Clang! The long sword in his hand shook, and the thunder flame sword swept across and swept the two of them over. Intense pain came from his chest from time to time, but Lin Tian's face was expressionless. Only his eyes were cold. At this time, he did not have much true core strength in his body, and his injuries were worsening. Therefore, after summoning the white lotuses, he directly used the yin-yang puppet and waved the spiritual sword in his hand as fast as he could. Clang! 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 The long sword continued to clash with Zhuoshang and Ling Yi. Although the two of them were not weak, and their battle prowess was not bad, they were in a very difficult situation at this moment. Firstly, they had to dodge the white lotuses around them, and secondly, they were suppressed by Lin Tian's powerful battle intent. Ah! Suddenly, there was a scream. A lotus petal floated into Zhuoshang's mind. Although it was only one petal, it was enough to make Zhuoshang suffer. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning. A cold light flashed in Lin Tian's eyes. He squatted slightly and then shot out, brushing past Zhuoshang. Poof! Blood splattered in the air, and Zhuoshang's scream came to an abrupt end. With a bang, Zhuoshang's body fell to the ground. There was a bloody wound on his throat, and blood was flowing out. The sword of lightning had cut his throat. So fast! Even with such a heavy injury, he can still do this. Really, many people were shocked. This level of strength was truly too freakish. You are the only one left. Lin Tian tilted his head and looked at Ling Yi. Facing Lin Tian's cold gaze, Ling Yi's heart trembled. Even though he was at the peak, he couldn't help but take a step back. Lin Tian's fighting spirit was too strong. Die! Ling Yi roared angrily. His true essence vibrated as he slashed out an extremely tyrannical sword aura. Lin Tian narrowed his eyes and quickly retreated, dodging the sword. However, in the next moment, his expression changed slightly. This was because after Ling Yi slashed out with this sword, he did not charge over. Instead, he ran in the direction of the experts of the 100 Refinements workshop. Seniors, save me! Ling Yi shouted. Lin Tian's expression was very cold, and his fighting spirit was shockingly strong. Ling Yi was scared and completely lost the courage to fight. Trash! Lin Tian was disdainful. However, he had to admit that Ling Ye's actions made him feel much more relaxed. At this moment, he mobilized all the true essence in his body, and the space between his brows lit up once again. The white lotus petals floating in the air quickly gathered in the middle, and in an instant, they condensed into a short sword about 5 inches long. Kill! Lin Tianling said. With a whoosh, the short sword was like a bolt of lightning. It arrived in an instant and directly pierced into the back of Ling Ye's head. Ling Yi immediately screamed and fell to the ground with a bang. He kept rolling and twitching as if he had gone mad. He kept tearing at his hair and even tore off a lot of his scalp. The scene could be said to be a ghastly sight. However, gradually, Ling Ye's screams became weaker and his movements became smaller. In the end, he completely stopped moving. The lotus sword had shattered his sea of consciousness. They're dead. Chu Xian, Zhuoshang, Ling Yi. It seems that only about 100 breaths have passed since he killed those 3 people. This guy, with such heavy injuries, actually killed those 3 traitors so quickly. Seeing the scene in front of them, all the disciples of the Burning Sun sect were dumbfounded. Good kill! Tu Bei roared. He was happy and sad at the same time, with an indescribable emotion. In the distance, The leader of the Burning Sun sect and the others stared straight at Lin Tian. Such a young man. How many in the world could there be? Cough! Lin Tian coughed up blood. Using the spirit sword to support his body, he squatted down. Using his true essence to kill 3 of consciousness cultivators in a row with a heavily injured body, his injuries had become more serious than before. Even his vision had become blurry. However, even so, his face revealed a smile. He looked at an old drunkard not far away. "Old man, I've taken care of this." An old drunkard laughed heartily. A drop of wine floated out from his gourd and was directly flicked into Lin Tian's mouth. "Kid, this thing is very precious. You've wasted 2 drops today." An old drunkard turned around and looked in the direction of the Burning Sun sect's elder Luo Yu. "The disciple has done the disciple's job. Now, as the master, it's up to you to clear the field." An old drunkard had a smile on his face. He stepped forward step by step, in the direction of the 7 Mysteries Pavilion's Yi Jingxing. Li Chong Feng Yu, clang. The sound of a sword rang out. Yi Jingxiang was directly sent flying, spitting out large mouthfuls of blood. An old drunkard's face didn't have the slightest killing intent. From start to finish, he maintained a faint smile. "When you were in the Imperial City, you tried to kill him. I didn't want to lower myself to your level, but I didn't think that you would kill your way to the Burning Sun sect, repeatedly attacking other people's disciples. Have you ever thought that your master would be angry?" Yi Jingxiang stood up, his face extremely ugly. "You!" Clang! Another ear-piercing sound of a sword rang out. Everyone only heard the sound and didn't see an old drunkard swing his sword. However, Yi Jingxiang was once again sent flying. A large amount of blood splattered in the air, causing everyone's scalp to go numb. Such a scene caused even the pupils of the 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder to shrink. Yi Jingxiang climbed up in a sorry state. There were 2 glaring sword wounds on his chest, and one could even see the shadow of his ribs. You have been deceiving everyone. You haven't been decadent." Yi Jingxiang's face was ashen. Bang! Just as Yi Jingxiang finished speaking, he was once again sent flying. A clear footprint appeared on his chest. "Whether I am decadent or not, what does it have to do with you?" An old drunkard indifferently said. While speaking, an old drunkard's steps were very gentle as he approached step by step. Yi Jingxiang stood up again, but he didn't dare to speak again. Instead, he retreated step by step until he was behind the 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder. "Senior." An old drunkard's strength caused Yi Jingxiang's heart to tremble. He had been injured twice and sent flying once, but he didn't even see an old drunkard's movements. "This chapter does not end. Please turn the page." Did not see clearly. The 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder nodded. Yi Jingxiang was an elder of the 7 Mysteries Pavilion. This time, he had come to help the 100 Refinements Workshop. He naturally wouldn't watch Yi Jingxiang suffer. Taking a step forward, he looked at an old drunkard and said coldly, "It seems that everyone has underestimated you. However, Junior, don't be too arrogant." An old drunkard still had a smile on his face. He didn't care about the 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder's words at all. "The people I want to kill have never been able to live. It was so in the past, now, and in the future." As he spoke, an old drunkard continued, "Get out of my sight. I'll settle the score with your 100 Refinements Workshop later." An old drunkard's voice was very calm, causing the 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder's expression to turn cold. "Insolent Junior, this old man wants to see how far you, the peerless genius from back then, have grown." As soon as he finished speaking, the dozens of weapons that had been shot down earlier trembled again and floated into the air, buzzing. 49 combined slash. The 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder said in a deep voice. He controlled the 49 weapons and pressed down on an old drunkard. However, in the next moment, the 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder's expression changed because an old drunkard's figure had disappeared. He had silently disappeared from his sight. I said, "Get out of my sight." A voice sounded beside him. The 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder was shocked. He looked to the side and saw that an old drunkard had already appeared beside him. "You slap." An old drunkard slapped the 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder with a backhand slap. The 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder was immediately sent flying and crashed into the duty hall. "Lord Elder." The expressions of the 100 Refinements Workshop's powerhouses changed, and they could not help but feel a chill run down their spines. At this moment, everyone's eyes widened in shock, as if they had seen a malicious spirit. A single slap had sent a 9th-level Imperial Sky Realm expert flying? This old fellow is so powerful? Lin Tian trembled. Back in the Imperial City, Yu Wuxuang had once said that an old drunkard was not much weaker than the Burning Sun Sect's Grand Elder. But now, it seemed that Yu Wuxuang had still underestimated an old drunkard's combat strength. The 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder and the Burning Sun Sect's Grand Elder had the same cultivation base. Now, an old drunkard was able to send the 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder flying with a single slap. His combat strength had clearly surpassed the Burning Sun Sect's Grand Elder by a lot. At this moment, the expressions of the Burning Sun Sect's members could be said to be extremely excited. "That was a good slap," Tu Bei roared. Further away, the Burning Sun Sect's Grand Elder could not help but cry. The man he had once forced to leave the Burning Sun Sect was still as outstanding and monstrous as before after so many years. He felt very gratified. At this moment, only Yi Jingshang's expression was the most unsightly, and his eyes were instantly filled with fear. Yu, staring at an old drunkard, Yi Jingshang staggered back. Even the 100 Refinements Workshop's Grand Elder could be sent flying with a single slap. How could such a person resist? How could they fight? An old drunkard walked in front of Yi Jingshang and calmly raised the Heart Spirit Sword. "Time flies. After so many years, I finally took in a good disciple. It could be considered the only meaningful thing in my life. I have a lot of expectations for the future." An old drunkard's voice was very lazy. "It's just that you old fellows just had to jump out and bully him. To be honest, I'm really not very happy." Yi Jingshang trembled slightly. A head flew up into the air, rolling on the ground for over 100 feet away. An old drunkard turned around and looked at the 100 Refinements Workshop's master and the others. "Next, it's your turn." End of chapter. Chapter 262. Reading on mobile phone. As an old drunkard looked over, the people of the 100 Refinements Workshop felt a chill run down their spines, and their faces turned pale. "Li Changfeng, what are you doing?" the owner of the 100 Refinements Workshop said. Staring at an old drunkard, the eyes of the people of the 100 Refinements Workshop were filled with fear. One of them could not help but take a step back. Mu Hong, Su Yu, and Yi Jingshang, the 3 Zephyr Realm experts, were killed in the blink of an eye. This made the people of the 100 Refinements Workshop deeply understand the gap between them and an old drunkard. It was too big, a huge gap. In the direction of the Burning Sun Sect's duty hall, a majestic spiritual ether spread out, and the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop rushed out. In a flash, he arrived in front of the people of the 100 Refinements Workshop and stared at an old drunkard with a solemn expression. After a pause, the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop said, "Li Changfeng, let's leave immediately, and this matter will be over." "How about it?" The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop, who was originally an expert at the 9th level of the Zephyr Realm, had a solemn expression on his face at this moment. "You want to leave just like that? Aren't you taking things too simply?" An old drunkard narrowed his eyes. As soon as these words came out, the eyelids of the people of the 100 Refinements Workshop twitched. The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop said in a deep voice, "One of our people has already died at your hands. It should be enough. It's just one person. The price is too small." An old drunkard shook his head. Hearing this, the people of the 100 Refinements Workshop were furious. The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop stopped the angry people and said, "Your disciple has learned the 100 Refinements secret method of our 100 Refinements Workshop. There is nothing wrong with us coming to the Burning Sun sect to verify it. Now, your disciple is alive and well, but our 100 Refinements workshop has lost an airborne realm expert. What else do you want? Don't go too far. Old man, you have lived for more than 400 years. It's not good to lie like this, right? An old drunkard smiled and said, "What kind of place is your 100 Refinements workshop? Even airborne realm experts can't easily break in, let alone steal the supreme 100 Refinements secret method of your 100 Refinements workshop. What are you guys up to? Do you think others won't be able to guess?" The expression of the 100 Refinements workshop's Grand Elder immediately darkened, and the expressions of the others also became even more unsightly. "What do you want?" said the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements workshop. At this moment, their 100 Refinements workshop could be said to be at an absolute disadvantage when facing the people from the Burning Sun sect. He was unwilling to continue fighting, because if they were to continue fighting, their group would definitely be completely annihilated. Once they were all wiped out, the 100 Refinements workshop would suffer a huge blow and might even be destroyed. An old drunkard glanced around, and the smile on his face grew wider. The Burning Sun sect was destroyed by you to such an extent. Isn't it too much to ask for some compensation? An old drunkard smiled and said, "All of you are cultivators in the airborne realm, so you all should be quite wealthy. Take it all out." In the distance, the corner of Lin Tian's mouth twitched. This old man. He originally thought that an old drunkard would make a move on the people from the 100 Refinements workshop, but he did not expect that this old man would actually extort a few giants at this time, which made him feel annoyed. However, after thinking about it, he sighed again. This was really in line with an old drunkard's current personality. "What? Impossible!" shouted the master of the 100 Refinements workshop. They were the giants of the Burning Sun sect, and the things in the stone rings were very precious. The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements workshop raised his hand and stopped the master of the 100 Refinements workshop. "Do as he says," the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements workshop said with a livid face. They were on the chopping block, and there was no room for negotiation now. With that said, the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements workshop waved his hand, and suddenly, a large pile of things fell out of the stone ring on the middle finger of his right hand, all of which were extremely precious treasures. Lin Tian looked ahead and saw a familiar kind of pill at a glance. It was the Forging Spirit pill that the Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect had given him, and there were more than 30 of them. Lin Tian was shocked. More than 30 Forging Spirit pills. This value could be said to be shockingly high. In addition, he also saw some other precious things, such as treasure-level weapons and airborne realm martial arts. At the same time, he also saw a few purple spirit coin cards. Looking at the level of the cards, each card had at least tens of millions of spirit coins. Wow! The disciples of the Burning Sun sect were in an uproar, and many could not help but swallow their saliva. Not only these ordinary disciples, but even the Burning Sun sect master and the others could not help but be slightly moved. The 100 Refinements workshop is really rich. An old drunkard smiled and looked at the master of the 100 Refinements workshop and the others. "What about you guys?" The owner of the 100 Refinement square clenched his teeth. However, he was also aware of the current situation his group was in. Immediately, he acted like the Grand Elder of the 100 Refinement square. He shook his hand and threw out some of the items within his stone ring. Then the other two did the same. Enduring the pain in their hearts, they took out all their treasures. Suddenly, the ground was full of dazzling treasures, and all kinds of treasures dazzled the eyes. "Is it okay now?" the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements workshop said. "Of course." An old drunkard smiled. Suddenly, the heart spirit sword in an old drunkard's hand shook slightly. 3 bloody lights flashed, and 3 arms flew out diagonally. While still in the air, they were crushed into a bloody pulp. "Ah!" Miserable cries rang out. The master of the 100 Refinements workshop and the other 2 elders of the 100 Refinements workshop each had an arm chopped off. The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements workshop retreated more than 50 feet away. He stared at an old drunkard with a face full of anger. Li Changfeng, you dodged quite quickly, as expected of an expert from the ninth heaven of the Imperial Sky Realm. An old drunkard said. You, the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop, was furious. On the other side, the Master of the 100 Refinements Workshop and the other two stared at an old drunkard with crazy hatred and killing intent in their eyes. Apart from the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop, every single one of them had an arm severed by the old drunkard. Moreover, the severed arms had all been minced into pieces by the sword energy. Even with spirit pills and miraculous medicines, it was difficult to repair them. An old drunkard smiled faintly. Now you can leave. Such a casual tone made the Master of the 100 Refinements Workshop and the others even more furious. I'll fight it out with you. The Master of the 100 Refinements Workshop roared furiously. However, in the next moment, his entire body was sent flying, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The other two elders of the 100 Refinements Workshop originally wanted to attack, but at this moment, they forcefully restrained themselves. Whether it was Yi Jingshang or the current master of the 100 Refinements Workshop, the two great experts were injured, but they did not see how an old drunkard attacked. This made them feel powerless. Aren't you leaving? An old drunkard smiled. The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop had an extremely gloomy expression. He gritted his teeth and said, Let's go. Originally, they were already in a disadvantageous position. Now, the Master of the 100 Refinements Workshop and the other two had lost an arm each, so their combat strength was even weaker. If they did not leave now, he was afraid that an old drunkard would change his mind and that the Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect would force them to stay. By the way, leave behind all the weapons you took out when you used the 100 Refinements secret technique. Don't take them away. An old drunkard's voice sounded again. The Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop trembled. He clenched his fists tightly and led the Master of the 100 Refinements Workshop and the other two elders away. In the blink of an eye, they rushed out of the Burning Sun sect and actually left all their weapons on the Burning Sun sect's mountain. In the blink of an eye, the four of them disappeared into the distant sky. They left? No, they escaped. Some of the Burning Sun sect's disciples muttered to themselves. Then, the crowd stared at an old drunkard, and their eyes all flickered. At this time, there was only one word in the minds of the Burning Sun sect's people: powerful. In the distance, even Lin Tian was stunned. He was speechless that an old drunkard had only extorted a few of the 100 Refinements Workshop's big shots. But he did not expect that an old drunkard would cut off the Master of the 100 Refinements Workshop and the other two elders' arms in the blink of an eye. This really surprised him. By the time he came back to his senses, the people of the 100 Refinements Workshop had already left the Burning Sun sect. Senior brother, the Master of the Burning Sun sect, was extremely excited and quickly rushed toward an old drunkard. An old drunkard smiled and pointed at the pile of treasures on the ground. Take them. They should be useful to the sect. The Master of the Burning Sun sect nodded and did not hesitate to take all the treasures on the ground. Hey, leave some money for me, an old drunkard shouted. At this time, Luo Yu, Yang Xiao, Zhao Hua, Tu Ming, and several elders came over. After not seeing each other for so many years, these elders of the Burning Sun sect missed an old drunkard very much. Old Tu, you look like you're in a mess. An old drunkard looked at Tu Bei and said. It had to be said that among the 6 giants of the Burning Sun sect, Tu Bei was the most seriously injured. His body was covered in blood, and he could not even walk steadily. Be *starred. I just blocked a few attacks for your disciple. Tu Ming cursed loudly. Such words immediately made all the disciples of the Burning Sun sect in the distance dumbfounded. Their sect's elder in the airborne realm actually called them father. An old drunkard was stunned. He glanced at Lin Tian not far away and smiled. Thank you. Changfeng. An old voice sounded. The supreme elder of the Burning Sun sect stood in the distance. He opened his mouth but didn't seem to know what to say next. An old drunkard, whose back was facing the supreme elder of the Burning Sun sect, trembled slightly for the first time. Brother, since you left, Master has been blaming himself for all these years. The Burning Sun sect Master whispered. An old drunkard tilted his head and looked at Lin Tian not far away. Don't look, your precious disciple won't die, Tu Bei said. Lin Tian supported his body with his spirit sword and said, Let's talk to the Supreme Elder. An old drunkard turned around and walked toward the Supreme Elder of the Burning Sun sect. Lin Tian couldn't see an old drunkard's expression clearly. He only saw an old drunkard follow behind the Supreme Elder and walk in a certain direction behind the Burning Sun sect's mountain. He pulled the corners of his mouth and smiled. Enduring the pain, he stood up with the support of his spirit sword. Lin Tian, how do you feel? The Burning Sun sect master came forward. Thank you for your concern, sect master. I'm fine, nothing serious. Lin Tiandao. Then he took a step back and solemnly bowed to the Burning Sun sect master and the four elders. For Lin Tianyi, several seniors have been injured. At the same time, they have also brought so much trouble to the sect. I'm really sorry, but I'm also very grateful. The Burning Sun sect master shook his head and looked at the back of the Burning Sun sect's mountain. We should thank you. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid we wouldn't be able to see senior brother again in this life. The Burning Sun sect master said. Chapter 263. Reading on a mobile phone, the Burning Sun sect leader and the others looked at the back mountain of the Burning Sun sect. Some were smiling, some were sighing, but in general, the 5 big shots were very happy. Please search, pin, and book yen. Com. To see the most complete. A novel. Lin Tian saw their expressions and couldn't help but smile. An old drunkard was really popular. Right, sect leader, Senior Pu, and the others. Lin Tiandao. In the distance, Pu Wen and the other deacons were lying on the ground. He didn't know what happened to them. He walked towards Pu Wen and the others and carefully checked their injuries. Then, he let out a sigh of relief. Although these people were seriously injured, fortunately, their lives weren't in danger. They had just fainted. Don't worry, we'll take care of them immediately. The Burning Sun sect leader smiled. Seeing Lin Tian's action, the Burning Sun sect leader and the other 4 elders couldn't help but nod inwardly. The first thing to worry about after a battle was to worry about the people who helped you. Although this action was small, it was enough to see a person's character. As the Burning Sun sect leader's words fell, the other deacons came forward. Under Elder Luo Yu's instructions, they carefully helped Pu Wen and the other injured deacons up and walked towards the Pill Treasure Hall. The Pill Treasure Hall wasn't just the place where the Burning Sun sect's disciples received pills. Some of the injured deacons would also go there to recuperate. Are your injuries really okay? The Burning Sun sect leader asked. I'm fine. Lin Tiandao. That's good. The Burning Sun sect leader nodded. At this time, the Burning Sun sect's disciples in the distance looked over. Many of them stared at Lin Tian with worship on their faces. Relying on his Sea of Consciousness realm cultivation to contend against a flight manipulation realm expert and survive. In the end, he even killed Ling Yi and the other 2 with a severely injured body. This caused the Burning Sun sect's disciples to feel reverence from the bottom of their hearts. As expected of Senior Li's disciple, too monstrous, someone murmured. For a moment, many of the disciples of the Burning Sun sect stood quietly in place. They were all stunned and did not know what to do. In the end, it was the sect leader of the Burning Sun sect who spoke, causing the crowd to disperse. Lin Tian, you should go back and rest too. The Burning Sun sect's sect master said. Although Lin Tian claimed that she was fine, the Burning Sun sect's sect leader knew that Lin Tian's current condition was not optimistic. All right, Lin Tian nodded. To be honest, his current condition was indeed not very good. Despite an old drunkard injecting a drop of spirit wine into his body, it was impossible to heal his injuries in an instant. After all, he took a hit from an airborne realm fighter head-on. Although Mu Hong hadn't used his full strength at that time, the power of that palm was still very terrifying. If it were an ordinary cultivator at the fourth heavenly layer of the sea of consciousness, they would already be in the underworld. After bowing slightly to the Burning Sun sect leader and the others, Lin Tian walked back to his residence. Looking at Lin Tian's figure, the Burning Sun sect leader and the other four big shots all smiled. Next, clean up the mess, the Burning Sun sect leader said. Looking around, the Burning Sun sect's main hall in front of them was severely damaged, and cracks were everywhere on the ground. Tu Bei said, the main thing is still the mountain shielding formation. When the mountain shielding formation was mentioned, Tu Bei's face did not look very good. The damage to the formation was related to Ling Yi, and Ling Yi was a disciple that he had carefully taught for more than a year. Don't think too much about it. It's not your fault. Elder Luo, you said. The Burning Sun sect leader looked at Yang Xiao and said, I'll have to trouble Elder Yang with this matter. Please ask a 6th level array manipulator to come back and help repair the formation core. When saying this, the Burning Sun sect leader looked a little serious because the mountain shielding formation was indeed very important. It was an important component of the sect's strength. Okay, I'll leave immediately, Yang Xiao said. Yang Xiao also suffered some injuries, but they were not too serious. After saying this, he immediately flew out of the Burning Sun sect. The Burning Sun sect leader looked at the back of the mountain. I wonder how senior brother and master's conversation went. Shaking his head, the Burning Sun sect leader, Tu Bei, and the other two elders all moved. The damage to the sect was not light, and they had a lot of things to do. When Lin Tian returned to his residence, the sky was slightly dark. He did not do anything else, but spread out the 3 spirit-gathering runes and immediately began to circulate the 4 extreme scripture. He slowly recuperated from his injuries. An old drunkard injected a drop of spirit wine into his body. After circulating the 4 extreme scripture, the effects immediately improved, and the pain in his chest rapidly lessened. Wong! A faint silver light intertwined around his body, brightening the dim room by a lot. The spirit-gathering runes attracted a lot of heaven and earth spirit chi. Under such rich heaven and earth spirit chi, he felt very comfortable, and the circulation of the 4 extreme scripture was also very smooth. Very quickly, 2 hours passed. At this time, his originally pale face became slightly rosy, and his essence, energy, and spirit had clearly improved. After another hour, Lin Tian circulated the 4 extreme scripture and completely refined the spirit wine in his body. His injuries were almost healed by more than half. At this time, he did not get up, but continued to circulate the 4 extreme scripture. In his mind, he recalled the scene when he fought against Mu Hong, and in his sea of consciousness, he repeated it over and over again. Wong! Gradually, the light on his body became more intense, and the aura outside his body became stronger. The sky was already filled with stars, and strands of starlight fell toward his residence. Lin Tian silently circulated the 4 extreme scripture in his room, and from time to time, the sound of thunder rumbling could be heard from his body. In this way, the night quickly passed. In the morning, Lin Tian opened his eyes and stood up. After clenching his hands, he felt that his strength had become a bit stronger, and his essence, energy, and spirit had also improved considerably. 2 beams of light flashed in his eyes. He had to admit that the increase in his strength was inextricably linked to the battle with Mu Hong, who was in the airborne realm. Yo, you're in good shape? A voice was heard. The door was pushed open without him noticing. Lin Tian looked up and saw an old drunkard leaning against the door. Lin Tian glanced at him and then sat down. Hey, aren't you going to invite your dear master in? An old drunkard rolled his eyes. It's not like you don't have legs. Lin Tian Dao. Looking at an old drunkard, he seemed to be having a good chat with the Supreme Elder. You're not cute at all, the old drunkard said as he kicked the door shut. Only then did he slowly move in. Lin Tian looked an old drunkard up and down. With a handsome face, shoulder-length hair, and a white robe, he looked to be at most 30 years old. I'm really not used to your outfit. Kid, you're jealous of me? An old drunkard put his arm around Lin Tian's neck and laughed. Lin Tian was speechless. This old guy was not serious at all. Speaking of which, what's your cultivation level now? Even the Supreme Elder of the 100 Refinements Workshop is no match for you. Lin Tian's expression became more serious. He tilted his head and looked at an old drunkard. Don't tell me you've reached the immortal realm? Who knows? An old drunkard laughed and looked at Lin Tian on Dao. You, on the other hand, have come up with something interesting. What interesting thing? Lin Tian Wei was stunned. An old drunkard narrowed his eyes and said, a white lotus floating between my eyebrows. Hearing an old drunkard's words, Lin Tian's expression froze. He said, I was just about to ask you. White lotuses suddenly appeared in my sea of consciousness. What's going on? Although the white lotuses in the sea of consciousness were very powerful, Lin Tian still did not know much about them. He really wanted to understand things that appeared in the sea of consciousness. As expected, an old drunkard laughed. Lin Tianwei was a little unhappy. Don't keep me in suspense. Be straightforward. Hey kid, be more polite to your dear master. An old drunkard removed his hand from Lin Tian's neck and sat opposite Lin Tian. Then he said, generally speaking, there can't be anything in a cultivator's sea of consciousness. At most, when one's cultivation reaches the immortal realm, one can put some weapons in it. That's nothing. However, in the long path of cultivation, there are very few geniuses who either because of an epiphany, some kind of fortuitous encounter, or because of innate talent, will gradually produce something special in their sea of consciousness. For example, lightning, fire, or even the sun, moon, and stars. This phenomenon is called a sea of consciousness anomaly. After that, an old drunkard grabbed the gourd and drank a mouthful of wine. Lin Tianwei was stunned. A sea of consciousness anomaly? An old drunkard nodded. Very few people can comprehend a sea of consciousness anomaly. It can be said to be 1 in 10,000. Once one can comprehend and control a sea of consciousness anomaly, one's combat strength will definitely increase greatly. Some extremely powerful sea of consciousness anomaly can even allow a cultivator to cross 8 small realms to fight. Cross 8 small realms to fight? That's too exaggerated. Lin Tianyi was shocked. He thought that his strength was not bad, but now he could only cross 3 small realms to fight. However, an old drunkard said that there was someone who could cross 8 small realms to fight with a sea of consciousness anomaly. This was simply, it could only be described as heaven-defying. In his opinion, this was simply impossible. An old drunkard narrowed his eyes and said, if you believe it, it's true. If you don't, it's not true. Speak human language. Lin Tian was displeased. An old drunkard. In short, it's just a legend. I'm not sure. After a pause, an old drunkard asked, speaking of which, kid, what are the effects of those white lotuses in your sea of consciousness? Lin Tian nodded and briefly explained the effects of the white lotuses. An old drunkard thought for a moment and said, without a doubt, this is indeed a sea of consciousness anomaly. As for the effects, I don't think it's as simple as attacking the sea of consciousness and the nerves of the brain. According to what you said, I guess this thing can attack even the soul. It's simply the nemesis of those things that exist in the form of spiritual bodies. Spiritual bodies? What's that? Lin Tianwei was puzzled. For example, spirits, malicious ghosts, or pure divine sense bodies. An old drunkard said, spirits? Malicious ghosts? Lin Tian was surprised. Do such things really exist? Lin Tian was not surprised by pure divine sense bodies, because he had seen them in Fengjian City. At that time, the violet fairy left a strand of divine sense in his body, which later turned into pure divine sense bodies. However, he was a little curious about the so-called spirits and malicious ghosts. They seem to be just folklore. Chapter 264. Lin Tianwei asked suspiciously, Demon Burial Valley? For Gates' trial? He was a little surprised to hear those words. Full text to read. He looked at an old drunkard and saw that an old drunkard was staring out of the window as if he was thinking about something. "Old man!" Lin Tian shouted. An old drunkard coughed and said, "Let's talk about the Demon Burial Valley first. It's located in the center of the first heaven. It's said that it was a chaotic battlefield in ancient times, and it's also a place where demons were sealed. Since it's the ruins of an ancient battlefield, it's obvious that there are countless opportunities inside. Whether it's treasures, elixirs, powerful weapons, or ancient martial arts techniques, all of these can be found in the Demon Burial Valley." Then wouldn't the Demon Burial Valley be crowded every day? Lin Tianyi was shocked. An old drunkard slapped Lin Tianyi. "You didn't listen to me carefully. Didn't I say that the Demon Burial Valley will only open in about half a month? In other words, the Demon Burial Valley is usually closed." The old drunkard paused for a moment before he continued. "You can't say that it's closed, but it's very difficult to enter." Lin Tian frowned. "What do you mean?" An old drunkard said, "The Demon Burial Valley is surrounded by fog all year round. Even experts in the flight realm can't break through the fog and enter. It's only at a certain time every year that the thick fog will disperse and an opening to the Demon Burial Valley will appear. This opening will last for 2 months." Lin Tian nodded. "So that's how it is. What about the Four Gates trial?" he asked. An old drunkard said, "The Demon Burial Valley opens for 2 months every year. During this time, the 4 sects will let their outstanding disciples enter to train and improve themselves. This is the so-called Four Gates trial. Of course, when the Demon Burial Valley opens, it won't be just the disciples of the 4 great sects who will enter. In this world, other cultivators will enter as well. For example, some of the young elites of the array manipulation sect and some other powerful rogue cultivators." Lin Tian's eyes flashed. "So you're saying that a lot of people will die in these 2 months every year? That's inevitable." An old drunkard smiled faintly. "It's normal to fight and die in a ruin like that, which is full of opportunities and treasures. Apart from that, the Demon Burial Valley itself can be said to be a dark place. There are powerful and ferocious demonic beasts everywhere. If you're not careful, you'll become the demonic beast's food." An old drunkard paused for a moment before he continued. "Furthermore, as I've said before, the Demon Burial Valley is the ruins of a battlefield. There are many Een spirits there, and it's very strange. At the same time, there are also ferocious ghosts. Even the weakest of them is comparable to an airborne realm expert. It's very difficult to deal with them with normal means." Lin Tian frowned slightly. "So, it's really a dangerous place. What are you afraid of?" An old drunkard put his arm around Lin Tian's neck and said, "Don't you have that white lotus vision? I'm sure that if you encounter any Een spirits or ordinary ferocious ghosts, you'll charge forward. Those white lotuses in your sea of consciousness are definitely the bane of all Een spirits and ferocious ghosts. You'll torture them when you see them." "Are you sure?" Lin Tian was a little skeptical. "Don't doubt it. As your master, I won't harm you." An old drunkard rolled his eyes and said, "There's about half a month before the Demon Burial Valley opens. In this half a month, you'd better familiarize yourself with those white lotuses in your sea of consciousness. I'm sure that this time, you'll definitely be the biggest winner among all who enter the Demon Burial Valley." Lin Tian was a little speechless. There was only half a month. How could he just cultivate the white lotuses in his sea of consciousness? He looked at an old drunkard and said, "Forget it. I've already familiarized myself with the white lotuses in my sea of consciousness. Now that there's only half a month left, I plan to cultivate the white lotus sword technique during this time to improve my combat strength." Training in the white lotus sword codex was originally his decision, as the Azure Thunder Sword technique was no longer considered too powerful. After all, the powerful disciples of several sects and clans all had airborne realm martial arts techniques, which were all more powerful than the Azure Thunder Sword technique. If he didn't have such martial arts techniques, it would have been fine. But since he did, he naturally had to cultivate it. "You know the White Lotus Sword technique?" An old drunkard was a little surprised. Yes, I got it from the stone wall in the Valley of the Harp. The white lotuses in my sea of consciousness were also condensed at that time, Lin Tian said. Hearing this, an old drunkard immediately laughed. This scene is really similar. An old drunkard's disciple indeed. After laughing for a while, an old drunkard stopped and said, although the white lotus sword technique is very powerful, it is ultimately more suitable for women to cultivate. Well, how about this? I'll teach you another airborne realm sword technique. Lin Tian tilted his head and looked at an old drunkard. An old drunkard drank a mouthful of wine and said, when you were in the imperial city, you once refined a fire crystal, and your spiritual chi contained the power of fire. It is very suitable for the Burning Sun sect's 9 styles of the Burning Sun. With that, an old drunkard stood up and said with a smile, let's go, kid. There are still 15 days before the Demon Burial Valley opens. I'll personally guide you in cultivation. Really? Lin Tianyi was surprised. An old drunkard was very powerful. It was definitely a good thing for such a strong person to personally guide him in cultivation. This could be seen from Ling Yi. Back then, Tuomo had also personally guided Ling Yi in cultivation. In the end, Ling Yi's strength had increased by a large margin in just a few days. An old drunkard rolled his eyes. Demon Sealing Gorge, let's go. With that, an old drunkard walked out of the room. Lin Tian directly followed him and walked towards the Demon Sealing Gorge. Senior Li Chongfeng. And that Lin Tian. I never thought that Lin Tian would be Senior Li Chongfeng's disciple. Yeah, no wonder he's so strong. On the Demon Sealing Gorge, seeing an old drunkard and Lin Tianyi walking, the disciples of the Burning Sun sect were all shocked. Lin Tian was already used to being talked about. An old drunkard was obviously even more used to it. The two of them jumped down the Demon Sealing Gorge. Not long after, they arrived in a forest 13,000 feet away from the Demon Sealing Gorge. In this place, the light was very weak and dim. The air was filled with an extremely shocking demonic aura, causing people to feel somewhat depressed. Lin Tian glanced around and found that there were many demonic beasts in the vicinity. Moreover, the weakest among them was a Class 7 demonic beast. He even saw a few Class 9 demonic beasts. His heart couldn't help but tighten. A Class 9 demonic beast was an existence comparable to an expert at the 7th heavenly layer of the Sea of Knowledge. It would be very dangerous for him to face a Class 9 demonic beast. It'll be good for you to get used to this oppressive atmosphere, an old drunkard said. Lin Tian nodded and fixed his gaze on an old drunkard. Got it. Let's begin. An old drunkard picked up a branch from the ground. When we were in the Imperial City, I found that you cultivated a very powerful protective technique. It's stronger than any of the techniques of the 4 great sections. Therefore, I won't teach you any techniques. I'll only teach you the 9 forms of the Burning Sun sword technique of the airborne realm. An old drunkard said as he lifted the branch in his hand and gently chopped down. The first sword combines slash. Spiritual essence flows through the arm and condenses into a line through the sword. Condense the spiritual essence into a sharp blade. At the same time, it also has the power of vibration. An old drunkard gave Lin Tian a detailed explanation of how to circulate spiritual essence as he made the first sword strike. Lin Tianyi listened to an old drunkard's explanation of the essence of the sword technique as he carefully observed an old drunkard's movements. His eyes flashed with light from time to time, and he felt that he had comprehended the first sword strike in an instant. This made his heart skip a beat. He thought to himself that it was indeed different to have a master teaching him. Teaching martial arts in such a way was indeed much faster than training on his own. Clang! 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 The sound of swords was heard in the shrubs, and the air became scorching hot. There were many monsters around, but at this moment, they were all frightened when they heard the sound of swords. As such, all the monsters around the shrubs fled in the blink of an eye, and the demonic aura in the air suddenly became much weaker. An old drunkard held an ordinary branch in his hand, but at this moment, it seemed to be a terrifying weapon. As an old drunkard moved, the air in the direction of the branch trembled. After that, an old drunkard performed the second sword strike all the way to the sixth sword strike, causing the temperature in the area to rise. The seventh sword strike, burning abyss. The eighth sword strike, splitting sky. The ninth sword strike, burning Sunday. An old drunkard performed the burning sun swordsmanship as he explained to Lin Tian, performing all 9 sword strikes. An old drunkard spent a total of 4 hours performing the 9 sword strikes because his explanations were very detailed. Lin Tian's eyes sparkled. In just 4 hours, he had memorized all the essentials of the burning sun swordsmanship. At this moment, he felt as if he had been practicing this sword technique for a long time. Lin Tian naturally knew that this was all thanks to an old drunkard. If an old drunkard hadn't explained while practicing, he wouldn't have been able to reach this step in such a short time. The burning sun swordsmanship is just like its name. When you perform this sword technique, the blade will become scorching hot. When you practice the last few sword strikes, the sword radiance will be even more scorching hot. Its attack power is very strong. Among all the martial arts of the 4 big sects, it is only slightly weaker than the 100 refinements technique. An old drunkard said, "You have refined a fire crystal before, so it should be easy for you to practice this sword technique. Its power will also be much stronger than that of ordinary people." After a pause, an old drunkard looked at Lin Tian. "Well, after watching my demonstration, how do you feel now? I have memorized the essentials of the sword technique, but I think I can only master the 6th sword strike in half a month." Lin Tian Ondao. An old drunkard gave Lin Tianyi a slap. "This is a martial arts technique of the airborne realm. You are able to master the 6th strike of this sword technique with your cultivation at the 4th firmament of the spiritual sea. This is already very impressive." An old drunkard took a step back as he said, "Now, take out your sword and attack me with the burning sun swordsmanship. I will suppress my power to a certain extent." Lin Tian frowned. "I need to train for a while. Fighting is the best training." An old drunkard said, "Remember, attack with the intention of killing me." Lin Tian thought for a bit and nodded, taking out the heart of spirit from the stone ring. "Here I come, old man." Lin Tian waved his right hand and attacked like a phantom. The blade of the heart of spirit buzzed, and the blade was shrouded in a layer of scorching flames in an instant. It was the first strike of the burning sun swordsmanship. Combined slash. The first strike was actually able to ignite the sword? The old drunkard was slightly startled. Soon after, he laughed out loud. It seems that the effect of the fire crystal is not bad. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.